Thanks so much for joining us and welcome to another hour of CGTN's year-end special. I'm Zhongshi.
And I'm Li Qiuyuan. Join us as we reveal the biggest stories, defining moments, landmark achievements, and milestones over the last 365 days.
We'll also be featuring celebrations across the globe from the biggest cities to countries located in remote corners of the world. Which places are ringing in the new year at this very moment,
Well, you know what? Several cities in Australia are already a few of them. And in this very special bulletin, we'll be bringing you an in-depth look at the biggest headlines that rocked the country.
We certainly will do now, from how it's handled a second year of COVID-19 to its controversial defense pact with Britain and the United States.
But first, here's a roundup of places welcoming 2022.
At this hour, Pacific nations are ringing in 2022, including the island of Efate, the Solomon Islands, and Australia.
And in the 18th century, the island of Efate was named Sandwich Island by the English explorer Captain James Cook.
The Solomon Islands are next. They gained independence from the British only in 1978. They have their own prime minister, but Queen Elizabeth II is technically still the head of state.
And finally, parts of Australia have stepped into 2022. Elizabeth II reigns as Queen of Australia, too.
Australia had an eventful 2021 dealing with the coronavirus pandemic and also signed a controversial nuclear submarine deal with the U.S. and the U.K.
That's true. And for more on this, let me now bring in our guest, Mr. Darrell Guppy, CEO of Guppy Traders in Darwin, Australia. Happy New Year to you, sir. You know, some analysts are saying this AUKUS Pact propagates Cold War mentality. What do you make of this?
Certainly, America's Cold War mentality is one factor. It seems that America always needs to create an enemy. Since its founding, America has been at war 92% of the years since 1776. Now, a second factor is Australia's fear of Asia and China. The current Australian government is uncomfortable with the more sophisticated and advanced Asia and China. And then, of course, you got the dreams of restoring a British Empire. That's the third factor. Boris Johnson has an outdated idea of England's position and influence in the world.
Mr. Guppy, is China the primary target of the AUKUS deal here? Because some have gone so far as saying that China or a united front against China was the reason that the AUKUS deal was inked in the first place.
Yes, AUKUS is clearly designed to counter China. But AUKUS is also in addition to America's Indo-Pacific tilt that was first articulated by President Obama. Australia really wants to entangle the United States in the region so they won't leave the region. And the current leadership in Australia is trying to create a sense of obligation by buying US defence equipment and by being even more anti-China than the United States, and at times by taking the lead in expressing some US policies. So AUKUS is based on the false belief that China wants to take over other countries.
And Mr. Guppy, we're just minutes or seconds away from midnight from the year 2022. As we await for that moment, let's also talk about this. Russia's ambassador to Indonesia has been quoted as saying the AUKUS Pact is very dangerous and that it won't bring peace to the region. What impact would it have in your view?
It's certainly true. Australia's current belligerence represents a move away from diplomacy. Now, that reduces Australia's ability to exert influence in the region through trade agreements like RCEP, because Australia is seen as a proxy for America. But this isn't 1970, where Asia was less cohesive and developed. The region is keenly aware of China's importance. It's a geographical fact of life, and Australia is now out of step with this reality. The reduction of Australia's diplomatic influence in the region undermines the ability to maintain peace within the region.
Sir, U.S. allies Japan and India have welcomed the AUKUS Pact. What are their geopolitical considerations?
Support from India and Japan for AUKUS is not really a surprise. They're members of the Quad Alliance, so they support any effort at all to contain China. Now, the main concern in the region with the Quad is the re-emergence of Japan's military ambitions. Australia seems unaware of these concerns amongst countries in the ASEAN region, but they are there. And India is the least reliable member of the Quad as they continue to buy sophisticated weapons from Russia. AUKUS is a coalition of Western countries that cannot accept that there has been that China is a significant economic and political player in the region.
Oh, that's the countdown we're seeing there in Sydney. This is the iconic Sydney Harbour Bridge. We're going to ring in the new year. There you have it.
The iconic fireworks just over the Sydney Harbour. Mr. Daryl Guppy, CEO of Guppy Traders in Darwin, Australia, we want to thank you for joining us today. And Happy New Year to you, sir. A very special moment to share with you. Indeed.
And you're now watching the live pictures of the celebrations there in Sydney. It is known for being one of the largest fireworks display on the planet. But this year's spectacle is set to be the biggest yet. Just look at that spectacular view there.
It would be really a pity, a shame to not do it every year, as this has been a tradition in Australia. New Year Eve's fireworks over the Sydney Harbour are a loved tradition there in Australia. Who wouldn't? Look at that.
And this year, you know what? There will be more fireworks on the bridge than ever before. More than 25,000 shooting effects will be fired from the top and the sides of that Sydney Harbour Bridge. 5 floating barges will launch 9,000 aerial shells, and another 6,000 fireworks will shoot from the top of Sydney Opera House sails. And whales, cubes, sunflower shells, whirlwinds, and color-changing fireworks are some of the surprises in store for Sydney's New Year's Eve 2021 into 2022. You're watching.
It is really happening. The annual event is usually visited by over 1 million people. This year, people may be enjoying the display at home, though, due to COVID.
Yeah, local reports indicate a much smaller crowd, and officials are including an art show as well with the fireworks. Portraits of First Nation Indigenous people will also be projected on the Sydney Harbour Bridge.
I mean, I'm feeling for that. Look at that.
Just beautiful. And a lot of the Vantage Point this year will be pre-booked and ticketed due to pandemic control. Wish I could be there, though.
That makes the two of us.
Now, with that, Australia has welcomed 2022 officially. Let's look back at the year that has been for the land down under with this roundup of top stories in 2021.
For much of the pandemic, Australia's zero COVID approach has served it well with relatively low case numbers and low deaths. That was led by lockdowns and heavy restrictions, the city of Melbourne becoming one of the most locked down cities in the world. Sydney has also endured an extended lockdown this year to help slow a growing outbreak. But 2021 really marked a shift in strategy from relying on lockdowns to learning to live with the virus. And after a botched rollout of the vaccination process in this country, Australia eventually became one of the most vaccinated countries in the world as it slowly opens its international borders. But with surging cases here in New South Wales and other parts of the country driven by the Omicron variant at the end of the year, it's become clear that living with COVID is filled with constantly evolving changes. The year also saw Australia signal a greater focus on regional security, reviving the Quad partnership with India, Japan, and the United States. Leaders from the 4 countries met in Washington, where they pledged greater cooperation and better support for issues including vaccine delivery and climate change. Australia also joined a controversial new partnership with the US and the UK known as AUKUS. That included strapping a conventional submarine contract with France, angering France, and a plan to build a fleet of nuclear-powered submarines using US and UK technology. But experts say the move may have raised concerns by other countries across the region who may feel that they were left out, and certainly increased tensions with China, Australia's biggest trading partner. Greg Navarro, CGTN, Sydney.
Now, Indian shares are set for their best year since 2017, even as investors keep cautious towards the end of the year due to the Omicron variant. The hike is driven by an economic recovery from the pandemic-fueled slump and massive liquidity. The NSE Nifty 50 Index and the benchmark S&P BSE Sensex both gained 0.4% on Friday. They were up 24 and 21% respectively for the year.
And Bahrain has appointed its first ambassador to Damascus since it cut ties with Syria over a decade ago. It's the latest in a growing number of Arab states to revive ties with a conflict-stricken country. Last year, Oman became the first Persian Gulf Arab state to reinstate an ambassador to Syria. The United Arab Emirates sent its foreign minister to Damascus last month to meet with President Bashar al-Assad. It has also called for Syria to be readmitted to the Arab League. Persian Gulf Arab countries downgraded or shut missions in Damascus after the Syria war broke out in 2011.
All right, that is going to do it for this short edition of our special program. New Year is here. Coming up next is Global Business Special Year-End Program.
We'll be back at the top of the next
See you
hour.
then. See you then.
Hello and welcome to a special edition of Global Business here on CGTN. I'm Guanxing in Beijing. As we head into 2022, we bring you an in-depth look of the global economy in 2021 with insights from our reporters around the world. We'll also show you how regional markets ended the year. And first up, let's take a look at how the major stock markets in Asia closed on the last day of 2021. Earlier, we spoke to Timothy Pope in Shanghai, Diane Toh in Hong Kong, and Mayu Yoshida in Tokyo for the market wrap-up. Take a listen.
Chinese stocks traded generally higher on the last day of 2021, with most sectors locking in modest gains. The Shanghai Composite rose about 0.6% to close the year, up by 4.8%, making it far from the worst performer in Asia. Looking back at the year that was 2021, Chinese stocks traded near record levels early in the year. The CSI 300 was up at 5,800 points, near an all-time high in February after an extremely strong start. But blue chip stocks seemed to falter after that and never really recovered from a sharp correction in late February and early March. That was combined with a bit of stimulus shock when investors suddenly turned from being optimistic about China's robust economic recovery to being concerned about what might happen if monetary policy was tightened. That led the market to its low for the year that month, which it touched again in July when regulators moved in on education, tech and property companies, sparking a huge sell-off of both domestically and foreign listed Chinese stocks. Vaccines, NEVs and coal stocks were very topical all year. The fuel shortage, which hit China starting in September, saw a lot of attention focused on the energy sector. The country's second biggest coal extractor, Yenzhou Coal Mining, now renamed Yankuang Energy, was up almost 240% by mid-September as coal prices surged. It pared those gains somewhat, but still closes the year up by 134%. Looking ahead to next year, we've been told to expect continued reforms, the expanded rollout of the registration-based IPO system, and more cooperation with foreign securities regulators to govern offshore listings. And on that note, a happy new year from me, and it's over to Hong Kong.
Well, thanks, Tim. For a year that was supposed to be about recovery, the Hong Kong stock market heads into 2022 with its poorest report card in a decade. It was hit with troubles from the Chinese property sector, Beijing's scrutiny over Chinese tech firms, as well as Sino-US tensions. That left the Hang Seng Index plunging 14% this year, the benchmark's worst annual performance since 2011. Hong Kong also fell to number 4 among top IPO markets, having ranked number 1 for 7 years out of the last 12. That's despite a strong first half of the year when Hong Kong reached a record high in terms of total IPO proceeds. Among them, TikTok rival Kuaishou Tech debuted as the world's 3rd biggest IPO in February, even though it did plunge shortly after. That came amid Beijing's regulatory crackdown on Chinese tech firms, which left the Hang Seng Tech Index taking a nosedive to end the year more than 30% lower. Investors were encouraged, though, when AI unicorn SenseTime solidly beat market expectations on its debut end of December. All in all, the Hong Kong Exchange described 2021 as a robust year. All right, that's a wrap from Hong Kong. Over to you, Mayu.
Well, the year 2021 was a pretty good one for Japanese stocks. On the final trading day of this year, the Nikkei share average closed at 28,791. This is the best year-end close since 1989, when Japan was still enjoying the bubble economy era. The lowest point we saw this year was at 26,000 line, while back in September we saw the Nikkei crawl back to 30,000, a level we haven't seen in 30 years. And at the end of the year, the Nikkei rallied 4.9% this year, marking its 3rd annual gains. Analysts say the Nikkei was driven by monetary and fiscal stimulus. Also supporting the markets were optimism for post-pandemic economic recovery, especially after Japan lifted COVID restrictions in the fall. And this led to buying in some of the pandemic losers. For example, shipping firms, they lost ground in 2020 amid the pandemic, but Japan's 3 largest shippers were the best performing blue chips in 2021. They were boosted by high container rates. Nippon Yusen rising. Kawasaki and Mitsui OSK lines all saw their stock price more than double in 2021 from the year earlier. And looking ahead to 2022, many analysts are expecting another good year for shippers as economies are likely to recover across the globe. All in all, this year was a pretty good year for Japanese stocks despite some uncertainty over the Omicron variant. But many analysts are expecting this rally to continue in 2022 as economies likely to reopen and hopes for improved supply chain outlook. That is it from me in Tokyo. Back over to you, Guangxing.
And now let's take a look at the business and economy events that made headlines in China in 2021.
'20年，我们国家总合生育率呢降到了1.3，长期的生育水平偏低。
外卖、即时配送、同城货运这些行业。
对黄威追缴税款、加收滞纳金并处罚款，共计13.4亿元。
大家一定要理性消费，那我们还是会一如既往做好我们的本分。
如果信念有颜色，那一定是中国火。
Treasury Department has put 8 Chinese companies on its investment blacklist.
As the new year draws to a close, we'll look back at some of the major global business headlines of this year. Joining me now are John Terrett in New York, Nawi Jabalkyo in London, and Uji Okrankowo in Nairobi. Happy New Year, folks. Well, thanks for being a part of this year on special. Well, 2021 was
great to see you.
Thank you. Indeed, good to see you all. And 2021 was, for all purposes, an extraordinary year for the entire world. And there was chaos and disruptions, but also hope and resilience. So as the year's final hours slip by, let's look back at some of the key events. And I'm sure there are so many newsworthy ones in your mind. It's very hard to summarize them. But if you have to describe 2021 in just one word, what would it be? John?
Well, I've chosen the word roller coaster. All right, now that's a terribly lazy tabloid word for a journalist to choose, and I'm sorry about it. But the thing is, it sums up what I've lived through here with the New York stock markets in 2021 absolutely perfectly. As you know, I go to the stock exchange every day for the business shows out of Washington, D.C. and London. And I think you take one of my reports in Beijing as well. Now, the stocks have literally been going up and down all year. They've been reacting to inflation, which has raised its ugly head for the first time in about 30 years. The COVID variants, they react to every little bit of news. And the Federal Reserve, the central bank, and how they're seen to be handling all of this. It moves the markets, if not a daily basis, and if not an hourly basis, and certainly a daily basis. Now, we call this the tick-tock of the day-to-day, the sort of fog of news, if you like. And there are two things to be said about that. It can be a bit confusing, and you often have to stand back to see what's really going on, to take a more considered view. But on the other hand, if you do report what happens every day, which I do, then you do get a snapshot of what is happening in the US economy and the global economy at any one time. Now, the US markets, the three big ones here, are all ending the year on significant double-digit gains. There have been some heavy losses. Some hedge funds are down. Some people have made bad decisions. Some stocks are not doing very well. But double-digit gains mostly. The S&P 500, the broad market here, is ahead by 27% compared to where it was this time last year. Guys?
Very wide ride indeed. And now, what is your choice? I hope not this one again.
Well, mine not focused. Yeah, not focused as much on the markets, perhaps not roller coaster, but my word would be endemic. 2020 was all about the pandemic spreading across the world, and a pandemic this year, it looks like it's here to stay, at least in the short term. So what governments in Europe, including the United Kingdom, have been trying to do this year is learn to live with the virus. In 2020, the UK saw its worst recession in about 300 years. GDP fell by almost 10%. This year, it's bounced back very strongly. The fastest growth in the G7 group of rich nations, almost 7%, and that's going to continue at a slower rate in 2022 and an even slower rate in 2023. So I think the vaccines have offered a lifeline here for lots of governments to try and look to deal with this. And what we're hearing from scientists now is that COVID-19 is something that looks like it's going to be here to stay. So I think from an economic perspective and from policymakers, it's all about trying to deal with what's becoming an endemic issue.
Well, a pandemic scarred year again. And what is your word in your part of the world?
Well, I certainly hate to be the pessimist amongst all, but I will say uncertain, and I'll be honest and say maybe even disappointing. That is the word that comes to mind, and that's mostly because 2021 fell short of the expectations that it would be a year where we see a rebound in all aspects of business and life here in Africa, especially after the havoc that, of course, the pandemic wreaked in 2020. Now, of course, Africa did exit recession. It is expected to rise. Growth is expected to rise by about 3.3% this year. But despite the development of vaccines, the virus continued to spread, mutate, and as a result, business activities on the continent were pretty slow to pick up. We retreated back indoors. And of course, looking at the vaccine acceptance in Africa, only about 3% of almost 8 billion doses of the vaccines given globally came to Africa, and only around 8% of Africans are fully vaccinated so far. So the outlook still remaining pretty uncertain. African economies remaining pretty vulnerable going forward. And of course, on the political front, we also saw growing civil unrest in countries such as Ethiopia and Sudan.
Indeed, Africa is disproportionately affected by the pandemic, and more needs to be done to address this uneven recovery issue. And business news is mostly numbers and data. So my next question to you guys is, which are the 3 numbers in the past year that impress you the most? John?
I love this question. You guys are so imaginative. I really enjoyed doing this. I've chosen first 905. Because that's how far the Dow fell on November the 26th, which is called Black Friday here, the day after the major holiday of Thanksgiving. And it shocked all of us. I was standing outside Macy's, the department store, reporting on retail sales and that sort of thing. And the Dow plummeted. It did go down to about 10,055, but it recovered to be down 905. And the reason was the Omicron variant. It suddenly dawned on Wall Street that this could be a problem. Now, it's turned out not to be quite what they thought, but it was a big shock on November the 26th. There was very light trading, the bosses were on holiday, and I think that they weren't there keeping their hand on the tiller, as it were. My other number is 82. This is Wally Funk. It's a lovely name. She's a lovely lady. She trained to be an astronaut with NASA in the 1960s, and NASA said, Wally, you can't go to space because you're a woman. You're a woman and you can't go to space. Now, that would never happen today. It is totally unthinkable, but she did go to space in July because she went up with Jeff Bezos on the Blue Origin spacecraft, and she flew briefly in space. She became the oldest person in space for a couple of weeks until William Shatner of Star Trek flew in space and became the oldest at the age of 90. And my other number is 3 trillion. Apple is about to become a $3 trillion market cap company. An extraordinary experience when you an extraordinary effort when you realize that in August of 2018 they became a 1 trillion, and a year later, 2 years later, they became a 2 trillion company, and now just over a year after that they become or very nearly a $3 trillion company. Quite an extraordinary thing, and the point about that is $3 trillion is bigger than the entire economy of France.
Indeed. Well, who said numbers are boring? I really like the 3 numbers you mentioned. Very interesting. And now, what are your picks?
Well, first of all, 82% is mine. That's the proportion of people aged over 12 here in the UK that have received both doses of a vaccination. Despite that relatively very high number, COVID-19 certainly still causing chaos here, particularly in parts of the economy like the hospitality sector, which has been hit hard by recent restrictions. My second number is 16 because this year we lost one of the great politicians of the late 20th, first start of the 21st century, Angela Merkel. After 16 years, she stepped down, weathered many political and economic storms, and took Germany to the brink of a $4 trillion economy before she stepped down. And lastly, the number 71, that's the percentage of fall in flights in and out of the UK compared to pre-pandemic levels, because travel and tourism, that's one sector that's been very hit hard by the pandemic and continues to be.
And the travel industry is still reeling. And Uchi, what was your numbers quickly, because we're really running out of time here?
Well, besides the 3.3%, which is the rate of growth expected this year, I would say 4 billion, because that's the amount that African tech companies managed to raise this year. And of course, tech and innovation, those segments in Africa are recording quite impressive numbers this year. And of course, 100 billion, which is the number that tech companies or African tech startups are expected to make in the coming year.
Well, thank you so much for sharing with us. Well, it was fun chatting with you guys. And that was John Terrett in New York, Nawi Jabakio in London, and Uchi Okurankwo in Nairobi for us. And that would do it for the special coverage of global business here on CGTN. I'm Guanxing in Beijing. On behalf of the team, Happy New Year to all of you, and wishing everyone a happy, healthy, and prosperous 2022.
This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
was another tumultuous year for the world in 2021, continuing the trend from 2020. Faced with unprecedented changes, many countries are experiencing unprecedented challenges. What progress has China made in diplomacy in the year 2021? And what actions would China take to safeguard world peace and promote international governance and true multilateralism? Welcome to this very special edition of The Point, coming to you at the end of the year 2021 as we enter a new year. And my special guest is State Councillor and Minister of Foreign Affairs of the People's Republic of China, Mr. Wang Yi. Mr. Wang, welcome to The Point. The year 2021 marks the 20th anniversary of the signing of China-Russia Treaty of Good Neighborhood and Friendly Cooperation. China and Russia have been acting in line with their responsibilities as major countries. How do you see the significance of this in terms of maintaining global strategic stability and development? How do you evaluate the current state of China-Russia relations?
中国都是具有世界影响的大国。
China and Russia are both major countries with global influence. Their strategic coordination and practical cooperation has a global significance and plays an irreplaceable role. This year, the two countries solemnly commemorated the 20th anniversary of the signing of the Treaty of Good Neighborliness and Friendly Cooperation between China and Russia. President Xi Jinping and President Vladimir Putin officially announced the renewal of the treaty and made it more relevant in the new era. The two presidents have stayed in close strategic communication throughout the year and will get together for the Winter Olympics in a little over a month. Guided by the two presidents, China-Russia relations have become more mature, stable, resilient, and vibrant. On pandemic response, China and Russia have served as a good example for the world. With solidarity and mutual assistance, the two countries have been pioneering in vaccine research, development, production, and global distribution, and jointly opposed the stigmatization and politicization of issues related to the coronavirus and its origins tracing, showing other members of the international community that solidarity is the right way to fight the pandemic. On global economic recovery, China and Russia have provided a strong impetus. Their all-dimensional cooperation was greatly elevated to higher levels. Bilateral trade has registered a new record. Major strategic projects are well underway, and cooperation on scientific and technological innovation is advancing rapidly. This has not only improved the well-being of the two countries and peoples, but also created new opportunities for world economic recovery. On regional stability, China and Russia have provided a solid safeguard. The two countries have maintained high-level strategic coordination, promoted a constructive role of the SCO and BRICS, and strengthened strategic coordination on hotspot issues. These efforts are the core pillar for regional stability and solidarity among developing countries. On global governance, China and Russia have demonstrated our sense of responsibility. The two countries firmly upheld the UN-centered international system and the international order underpinned by international law. We jointly opposed interference in other countries' internal affairs, unilateral sanctions, and long-arm jurisdiction. Our efforts have helped build a bulwark supporting the practice of true multilateralism and upholding international equity and justice, showing the world how major countries should behave. We are convinced that as long as China and Russia, as two major countries, stand together shoulder to shoulder and deepen coordination hand in hand, the international order will not fall into disarray, justice in the world will not collapse, and hegemonism will not win.
The EU describes China as a partner, but also as a systemic rival. And the ratification of the China-EU Comprehensive Investment Treaty has met difficulties because of internal problems within the EU. Where do you see Sino-European relations going next? And what will China do to promote, to push for the ratification of the investment treaty?
This year, new progress has been made in many areas in the relations between China and Europe. President Xi Jinping has chaired 2 video summits with French and German leaders. The China CEEC summit has been held successfully via video link. Premier Li Keqiang also engaged extensively with European leaders and business community. Economic and trade cooperation between the two sides has enjoyed positive growth despite overall difficulties, with trade volume for the whole year expected to increase by 30% from last year to exceed US $800 billion. The China-EU agreement on geographical indications has come into force. High-level dialogues on the environment and climate in the digital field have been officially launched. The number of freight services of the China-Europe Railway Express recorded a new high. New progress has been made in flagship Belt and Road projects such as the Paracas Port and the Budapest-Belgrade Railway. The two sides share extensive consensus on such issues as upholding multilateralism and enhancing global governance, and have achieved positive outcomes in tackling climate change and jointly responding to COVID-19. That said, we have also noticed that Europe's policy towards China seems to suffer from cognitive dissonance. It is hard to imagine that on one hand, Europe seeks to build a comprehensive strategic partnership with China, and on the other hand, it defines China as a systemic rival. This logic has not only undermined China-Europe relations, but also brought confusion to European friends themselves. Difference in systems does not mean China and Europe have to be rivals. The two sides could well respect each other, learn from each other, and complement each other. In this context, we stand ready to have closer engagement and communication and earnestly enhance mutual understanding between China and Europe, including open, candid dialogue on such topics as human rights and democracy. Moreover, we hope that Europe, as an important force in the process toward greater multipolarity, will shape an independent, objective, and rational perception of China at an early date, and promote and deepen its mutually beneficial cooperation with China following the principle of strategic autonomy. If China and Europe, as two great civilizations, major forces and big markets, can draw on each other's strength and forge synergy on the basis of mutual respect, this will augur well for the world and humanity. On the China-EU Comprehensive Agreement on Investment, it is an economic and trade agreement with the highest level of opening up and lowest market access threshold to date for China. It is good for China and even better for Europe. Obstacles to the agreement are obstacles to one's own development and will hurt the long-term interests of the European people.
In November 2021, Chinese President Xi Jinping presided via video link the special summit to commemorate the 30th anniversary of China-ASEAN dialogue relations. And he announced with ASEAN counterparts to elevate bilateral relations to that of a comprehensive strategic partnership. So looking back in 2021, how do you evaluate the development of China's diplomacy with neighboring countries in 2021?
This year has been a year of progress and harvest for China and other Asian countries. China has strengthened and upgraded its relations with ASEAN. The two sides have stood together in fighting COVID-19. The Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership has been signed and will soon enter into force. China and ASEAN have stepped up cooperation in the digital economy, blue economy, and green economy. Connectivity has been accelerated across the board, and the China-Laos Railway has successfully started operation. The South China Sea issue has been effectively managed under the framework of the Declaration on the Conduct of Parties in the South China Sea, and the freedom of navigation and overflight has been protected in accordance with law. On hotspot issues such as Afghanistan and Myanmar, China has stayed in close coordination with countries in the region to jointly safeguard stability in this part of the world. Asia has remained a region with the greatest vitality and development potential in the world. This has not come by easily. It is the result of years of hard work in solidarity by China and regional countries, and it deserves to be cherished by all. Meanwhile, we also see new challenges in this region. There are two divergent trends. One is to jointly pursue development and prosperity through mutual trust and cooperation. The other is to create division and confrontation through erecting walls and decoupling. It is important that Asian countries remain clear-eyed, stand firm in their positions, and make the right choice that serves their fundamental and long-term interests. We must not allow any country outside this region to stoke bloc confrontation in the region and push Asia toward a new Cold War. We must not allow any country outside this region to undermine existing regional cooperation structure and the regional integration process and replace them with one of their own design. We must not allow any country outside this region to provoke an arms race in the region or even proliferation of nuclear weapons and threaten security and stability in Asia.
During the 8th Ministerial Conference of the China-Africa Cooperation Forum, which was successfully held in November 2021, Chinese President Xi Jinping proposed to build a China-Africa community of shared future. And China has been vowing to step up its relationship with developing countries. So what specific measures will China take to boost these relationships, including those from Africa?
This year marks the 65th anniversary of the start of diplomatic relations between China and African countries. Not long ago, we successfully held the 8th Ministerial Conference of the FOCAC, despite the impact of COVID-19. President Xi Jinping put forward the spirit of China-Africa friendship and cooperation for the first time, set out 4 proposals for building a China-Africa community with a shared future in the new era, and announced 9 programs for cooperation with Africa. All this marked a new milestone in the history of China-Africa relations. Meanwhile, China's relations with other members of the developing world, including Latin America and Caribbean countries, Arab countries, and Pacific Island countries, have made important headway over the year, with fruitful results made in various areas of cooperation. China is a staunch member of the developing world. No matter how the international situation may evolve, China will unswervingly stand on the side of the developing world and unswervingly deepen mutually beneficial cooperation with other developing countries. China's vote at the United Nations belongs to the developing world. Looking ahead, we will focus on the following priorities. First, upholding the principle of mutual assistance to jointly develop a shield for immunity. China will continue to make all-out efforts to provide developing countries in need with COVID vaccines and essential supplies to ensure vaccine accessibility and affordability in developing countries and help boost their capacity, confidence, and resolve to fight the virus. Second, upholding the principle of mutual benefit to jointly develop an engine for development. We will continue to follow the principle of pursuing the greater good and shared interests, advance strategic coordination with other developing countries, increase trade and investment, and expand practical cooperation to support other countries in enhancing capacity for sustainable and self-generated development. Third, upholding the principle of sincerity, real results, amity, and good faith to jointly build a bridge for friendship. We will strengthen exchanges and mutual learning with other developing countries in the fields of political parties and political affairs, poverty reduction and development, and medical and health services, deepen friendship among the peoples, jointly safeguard the legitimate rights and interests of the developing countries, and pass on the spirit of friendship and cooperation from generation to generation.
The U.S.'s hasty withdrawal from Afghanistan drew scrutiny from the international community. What has China been doing? What role is China playing in terms of resolving or helping resolve hotspot issues such as Afghanistan?
In 2021, the entire world witnessed the Kabul moment when the U.S. forces left Afghanistan in a rush. Such irresponsible withdrawal has brought a serious humanitarian crisis to the Afghan people and enormous security challenges to regional stability. The scenes of chaos and even shocking brutality at Kabul airport will stay in the memory of humanity forever as a historic mark on the failure of the so-called democratic transformation. Facing the sudden changes in Afghanistan, China did not sit by but extended a helping hand. we immediately reached out to the Afghan people with emergency humanitarian assistance, especially vaccines, food, and winterization supplies. The Afghan people have suffered from years of war and turmoil and should not have to endure the ravages of the pandemic, hunger, and cold anymore. China has actively facilitated international coordination and played a constructive role in a stable transition of the Afghanistan situation. These efforts have been welcomed and praised by people across Afghanistan. As we speak, Afghanistan still faces serious challenges in economy, people's livelihoods, security, and governance. China will continue to pursue the policy of friendship toward all Afghan people. We support Afghanistan in building an inclusive government, ending turbulence, restoring stability, and rebuilding the country so that the Afghan people will be able to enjoy the benefits of peace and tranquility. I want to stress that major countries should shoulder special and important responsibilities for world peace and stability. In handling hotspot issues, major countries should uphold justice, not seek selfish interests, promote peace, not abuse the use of force, encourage dialogue, not resort to willful sanctions, and respect the views of the countries concerned, not throw their weight around. Over the past year, China has kept firmly in mind and fulfilled its responsibility and mission. We have proposed a 5-point initiative on promoting peace and stability in the Middle East, with a view to encouraging countries in the region to escape geopolitical rivalry between big powers and achieve self-strengthening through unity. We have put forward a 3-point proposal for the implementation of the two-state solution to facilitate a just settlement of the Palestinian question and effective governance in the State of Palestine. We have introduced a 4-point proposal for the settlement of the Syrian issue and supported Syria in accelerating reconciliation and reconstruction as well as returning to the Arab family. We have facilitated the resumption of compliance with the JCPOA to safeguard the international nuclear non-proliferation regime. We have promoted dialogue among relevant parties in Myanmar to encourage a relaunch of democratic transition. We remain committed to peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula and have worked for synchronized progress in the establishment of a permanent peace mechanism and the denuclearization of the peninsula. What has happened proves that China's growing strength increases the force for peace, and the rise in China's influence contributes more constructive factors. China will continue working with the rest of the world, play its due role, and make greater contribution to international and regional peace.
Well, during the past year, we have seen major Western countries and Western forces promulgating the Western liberal values and trying to instigate debates surrounding ideology. We have seen that on the international arena these days, there have been clashes of different concepts, different visions, different ideas. Could you elaborate a little bit on your understanding of the situation?
这个世界上仍有一些势力啊，总以为自己高人一等。
Some elements in the world still deem themselves superior and always want to impose their own will on others. They throw out arbitrary rules and use human rights, democracy, and other high-sounding excuses to smear and contain China and many other developing countries. We must not compromise or back down. Instead, we must face them head-on and pull together with most countries to defend fairness and justice and do the right thing for humanity. The first encounter was between true and false multilateralism. Certain countries, while chanting slogans about multilateralism in rhetoric, are building exclusive blocs in action. They are attempting to throw the world back into Cold War confrontation. In response, China has pointed out unequivocally that countries need to uphold and practice true multilateralism. We have stressed that there is but one international system in the world, for the example of the international system with the UN at its core. Countries need to resolutely uphold the authority and standing of the UN, jointly oppose division and confrontation, stand together against zero-sum games, and make constant efforts for greater democracy in international relations. This position has been recognized and supported by most countries in the world. The second was the encounter between true and false rules, A small number of countries talk about a so-called rules-based order, but they refuse to accept that rules should be based on commonly recognized international law. What they actually want is to impose the gang rules by them and their allies on all other countries. In response, China has spoken up repeatedly at the UN and on other multilateral occasions that there is but one set of rules in the world, for the example of the basic norms of international relations underpinned by the UN Charter. This strong message laid bare certain countries' intention to practice hegemony under the pretext of rules. It has contributed to the stability of the international order. The third was the encounter between true and false human rights. The U.S. and a few other countries, despite all their own human rights problems, have long sought to use human rights as a tool to meddle with other countries' internal affairs and attack and smear China and other developing countries with groundless accusations. In response, China has stepped forward to set the record straight, articulating China's outlook on human rights and presenting our accomplishments in human rights development. Meanwhile, we have resolutely pushed back false accusations and let the world see the hypocrisy of the self-styled champions of human rights. Justice lies in the heart of people. At the Human Rights Council and the UN General Assembly, we have thwarted, with overwhelming support from other countries, anti-China motions 4 times in a row this year. Nearly 100 countries expressed their support for China's just stance at the UN and their strong opposition to interference in China's internal affairs under the pretext of human rights. The fourth was the encounter between true and false democracy. The U.S. has staged a so-called Summit for Democracy and fabricated the false narrative of democracy versus authoritarianism. In response, China has staunchly upheld the common values of humanity, released a report, The State of Democracy in the United States, and encouraged inclusive discussions about standards and practices of democracy on bilateral and multilateral occasions. Our efforts have laid bare the self-contradictions and shortages of the U.S. democracy, and the U.S. intention has been widely questioned by the international community. The so-called Summit for Democracy ended hastily with no consensus, no outcome, and no future. This has once again proved that democracy is a common value of humanity, on which no country is entitled to lecture others. Ultimately, it is up to the people of a country to say whether or not their democracy is true and effective.
The COVID-19 pandemic is still spreading around the world. What has China done in terms of helping unite the world to fight against the virus and helping trace in a scientific manner the origins of the virus and also helping the economic recovery of the world?
疫情发生以来，中国上下同心，科学抗疫。
Since COVID-19 hit, the whole of China has united as one and launched a science-based response, setting a good example of COVID containment for the international community. While bringing the virus under control domestically, China has, from the very beginning, been committed to helping others affected by the virus. We took the initiative to engage in international cooperation against COVID and made contribution to global public health security. China started with global emergency humanitarian assistance, kicking off the first half of the international campaign against the coronavirus with a focus on providing emergency supplies. Up until now, China has provided about 372 billion masks, over 4.2 billion protective suits, and over 8.4 billion testing kits to the international community. Early this year, we began focusing on vaccine cooperation as the international campaign against the virus entered its second half. I wish to take this opportunity to announce that as of 26 December, China has provided more than 2 billion doses of COVID vaccines to over 120 countries and international organizations. China has fulfilled the pledge and commitment made by President Xi Jinping to the rest of the world and has become the biggest provider of outbound vaccines among all countries. 1 out of every 2 COVID vaccines administered across the globe is made in China. For many countries, especially developing countries, the first batch of vaccines and the majority of the vaccines they have received came from China. This sets China apart from certain countries which only make empty promises. Not long ago, President Xi Jinping announced that China will provide another 1 billion doses of COVID vaccines to Africa, including 600 million doses as a donation, to help African countries achieve the goal set by the African Union of vaccinating 60% of the African population by 2022. China will also donate additional 150 million doses to ASEAN countries. We support Chinese companies in transferring technologies to developing countries and have launched joint vaccine production with 20 countries. All in all, China did not do any of this for selfish geopolitical interest, and China did not attach any political strings to these actions at all. Rather, we are taking concrete actions to help build a great wall of immunization for the health of all and a health shield for developing countries.
Now, the Winter Olympic Games in Beijing will be kicking off, and some countries, including the United States, has decided not to send officials to these games. What is your comment?
奥林匹克精神的内涵是友谊、理解、团结、公平。
The Olympic spirit is about friendship, mutual understanding, solidarity, and fair play. The politicization of the Olympics by certain countries completely violates and discredits the Olympic spirit. At the recent 76th session of the UN General Assembly, a resolution on Olympic truce for the Beijing Winter Olympic Games was adopted by consensus. This document, co-sponsored by 173 member states, speaks volumes about the collective commitment of the international community to the Olympic spirit and their strong support for the Beijing Winter Olympics. Athletes of all nationalities are the real stars on the Olympic stage, cheered on by hundreds of millions of sports fans around the world. The political maneuvering of a few Western politicians will do no harm to a splendid Olympic Games, but only expose their ugly intention. Following a green, inclusive, open, and clean approach, China will ensure high-standard, high-quality preparation for the Winter Olympics and present to people of all countries a streamlined, safe, and splendid Games. We believe that whatever interference there may be, the Beijing Winter Olympics will promote the Olympic spirit, help enhance understanding and friendship between people of different countries, demonstrate the strength of international solidarity and cooperation, and bring more confidence and courage to a world still under the shadow of a pandemic.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wang. And with that, we come to the end of this special edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin, coming to you from Beijing. As usual, you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter using the handle Liu Xin in Beijing. Thanks for watching. You've got The Point.
Making sense of the overwhelming wave of information means cutting through the noise to shine a light on the heart of the story and making room for new perspectives. True understanding means the ability to see events from more than one side. I'm Liu Xin, and this is The Point.
This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hey, welcome to another hour of CGTN's year-end special. I'm Li Qiuyuan.
And I'm Zhong Shi. Now, in this part of the world, countries including China are just 2 hours away to the new year. Chinese President Xi Jinping has delivered his annual address.
That's right, and he spoke about China's struggles and progress over the past 12 months. He also touched on issues that he considers most important, as well as his hopes for the future. Let's have a listen.
On New Year's Eve, President Xi Jinping delivered his 2022 New Year address through China Media Group and the Internet.
"同志们、朋友们、女士们、先生们，大家好。2022年即将到来。我在北京向大家致以新年祝福。回首这一年，意义非凡。我们亲历了党和国家历史上具有里程碑意义的大事，2个100年奋斗目标历史交汇。我们开启了全面建设社会主义现代化国家新征程，正昂首阔步，行进在实现中华民族伟大复兴的道路上。从年头到年尾，农田、企业、社区、学校、医院、军营、科研院所，大家忙了一整年，付出了，奉献了，也收获了。在飞逝的时光里，我们看到的、感悟到的中国，是一个坚韧不拔、欣欣向荣的中国。这里有可亲可敬的人民，有日新月异的发展，有赓续传承的事业。7月1日，我们隆重庆祝中国共产党成立100周年，站在天安门城楼上，感慨系之，历史征程风云激荡，中国共产党人带领亿万人民经千难而百折不挠，历万险而矢志不渝，成就了100年大党的恢宏气象。不忘初心，方得始终。我们唯有踔厉奋发，笃行不怠，方能不负历史，不负时代，不负人民。党的19届六中全会通过了党的第3个历史决议，100年成就使人振奋，100年经验给人启迪。我曾谈到当年毛主席与黄炎培先生的窑洞对，我们只有勇于自我革命，才能赢得历史主动。中华民族伟大复兴绝不是轻轻松松敲锣打鼓就能实现的，也绝不是一马平川朝夕之间就能到达的。我们要常怀远虑， 居安思危，保持战略定力和耐心，致广大而尽精微。大国之大，也有大国之重。千头万绪的事，说到底是千家万户的事。我调研了一些地方，看了听了不少情况，很有启发和收获。每到群众家中，常会问一问，还有什么困难？父老乡亲的话我都记在心里。民之所忧，我必念之；民之所盼，我必行之。我也是从农村出来的，对贫困有着切身感受。经过一代代接续努力，以前贫困的人们现在也能吃饱肚子，穿暖衣裳，有学上，有房住，有医保，全面小康，摆脱贫困，是我们党给人民的交代，也是对世界的贡献。让大家过上更好的生活，我们不能满足于眼前的成绩，还有很长的路要走。黄河安澜是中华儿女的千年期盼。近年来，我走遍了黄河上中下游9省区，无论是黄河长江母亲河，还是碧波荡漾的青海湖，威仪磅礴的雅鲁藏布江，无论是南水北调的世纪工程，还是塞罕坝林场的绿色地图，无论是云南大象北上南归，还是藏羚羊繁衍迁徙，这些都昭示着人不负青山，青山定不负人。这一年还有很多难忘的中国声音、中国瞬间、中国故事。请党放心，强国有我的青春誓言，清澈的爱只为中国的深情告白。祝融炭火，西河逐日，天河遨游星辰，运动健儿激情飞扬，奋勇争先。全国上下防控疫情坚决有力，受灾群众守望相助，重建家园。人民解放军指战员、武警部队官兵矢志强军，保家卫国。无数平凡英雄拼搏奋斗，汇聚成新时代中国昂扬奋进的洪流。祖国一直牵挂着香港、澳门的繁荣稳定，只有和衷共济，共同努力，一国两制才能行稳致远。实现祖国完全统一，是两岸同胞的共同心愿。真诚期盼全体中华儿女携手向前，共创中华民族美好未来。我同外国领导人及国际组织负责人电话沟通、视频连线时，他们多次赞扬中国抗疫和为全球疫情防控所做的贡献。截止目前，中国累计向120多个国家和国际组织提供20亿剂新冠疫苗。 世界各国风雨同舟，团结合作，才能书写构建人类命运共同体的新篇章。再过1个多月，北京冬奥会、冬残奥会就要开幕了，让更多人参与到冰雪运动中来，这也是奥林匹克运动的题中之意。我们将竭诚为世界奉献一届奥运盛会。世界期待中国，中国做好了准备。新年的钟声即将敲响，我们的3位航天员正在浩瀚太空出差，海外同胞仍在辛勤耕耘，使领馆、中资企业等海外派驻人员和广大留学生仍在勇毅坚守，无数追梦人还在奋斗奉献。大家辛苦了，我向大家致以诚挚的新年问候。让我们一起向未来，祝福国泰民安。
Asia Pacific countries are getting ready to celebrate New Year. In Australia's Brisbane River is a popular place at New Year's Eve. A tradition there is to watch the fireworks show on a New Year's Eve cruise.
Fancy! Let's now go to Papua New Guinea as well, which is the second largest country in Oceania and lies in the Southwest Pacific Ocean. In the capital, Port Moresby, many people head downtown to watch the stunning New Year fireworks and gather in the square, waiting for the clock to strike at midnight.
In Russia, they have an equivalent of Santa Claus, who is called a Ded Moroz or Grandpa Frost. People decorate fir trees with a star on the top, waiting for him to bring New Year gifts. In October, Australia and Indonesia issued a joint statement saying that reducing greenhouse gas emissions is a global challenge. As the world gathered for the COP26 climate summit and scientists warned of catastrophic dangers, Australia and Indonesia said they would share technology to support energy transitions. They also agreed to emphasize the role of trade and investment in the green economy, secure resilient supply chains, and work through green finance mechanisms.
And Professor Azmi Hassan is joining us via Skype now. He's a senior political analyst based in Kuala Lumpur. Great to have you with us, Professor. Now, Indonesia has been committed to being something of a middle ground between China and the United States in the ASEAN region. It's been critical with Australia over its nuclear submarine deal with the United States and the UK. I mean, how relations will fare in the region in the new year? What do you think?
Yeah, it's true that Jakarta has been very, very cautious or very critical about the recent defense agreement between Australia, UK, and also United States. Jakarta said why they are cautious is that it will divide ASEAN, and it is divide ASEAN. Malaysia and Jakarta are very cautious about it, and Singapore and Philippines, for example, they are welcoming AUKUS. So I think it's going to be very interesting how Indonesia or ASEAN tread the issue of AUKUS for the coming 2022. Zhuyan.
Professor Hassan is Zhong Shi here in the Beijing studio. Australia and Indonesia keep talking about a green economy. It looks like they both have the political will to do it, but what specific measures will they implement to make sure that this is a win-win for both countries?
Green economy, I think a few months ago, a lot in Glasgow during COP26, a lot about green economy is talked about. The simple term of green economy is low emission of carbon. But the problem is, yes, you need political will, but again, Australia and Indonesia is the #1 and #2 producer of coal. And coal is one of the main reasons why carbon emission or climate change cannot be minimized. So I think both Australia and Indonesia need a political will to reduce their coal export. Seen during COP26, both Australia and Indonesia are not part of the nation that agree to phase out the coal. So I think, as you said just now, political will are needed both from Canberra and also Jakarta so that coal usage will be minimized.
Professor Azmi Hassan, we appreciate you joining us on New Year's Eve. Thank you so much for your expertise and your analysis.
Thank you. Now, Russian President Vladimir Putin's televised New Year address to the nation has been broadcast in the east of the country. He first congratulated everyone, especially people in professions like the military, medics, and drivers who are on duty during the holiday.
People manning their posts to make sure that everyone can have a safe and happy holiday. Putin said Russia faces challenges, but the people have learned to deal with them. He wished everyone good health and expressed condolences to those who lost their loved ones during the pandemic. And he said the main goal now is to improve living standards and incomes, which would make the country stronger. Now do stay with us here on CGTN. We'll be back after a short break.
On souhaite traditionnellement, lors des vœux pour la nouvelle année, le bonheur, la prospérité, la santé. Et bien entendu, je vous souhaite tout cela, et même plus que jamais. Mais j'ai envie d'ajouter le brin de folie, l'inventivité et l'énergie, la force et le courage, afin de mener à bien tous vos projets cette année. Excellente année 2022 à tous. Je vous souhaite à tous et à toutes une belle et heureuse année 2022. Je profite de cette occasion pour sincèrement vous remercier de votre fidélité tout au long de cette année compliquée. Que tous mes vœux de bonheur, santé et succès vous accompagnent en 2022.
Merci à vous tous de votre présence. À chacun et à chacune de vous, je vous présente mes meilleurs vœux. Les meilleurs vœux les plus sincères de santé, de succès et de prospérité. À vous-même, à vos familles et à vos proches. Que 2022 puisse être meilleur que 2021. Bonne et heureuse année 2022.
Some other news we're following for you today. Thousands are evacuating the western U.S. state of Colorado as fast-moving wildfires rip through areas hit by a historic drought. Hundreds of homes have been destroyed as the blazes are burning in more suburban parts of the state. Nearly 2,000 acres have been engulfed in Boulder County, north of Colorado's capital, Denver. Officials are warning of casualties as the blazes have hit some establishments. Evacuations are underway in the towns of Louisville and Superior. Colorado State Governor Jared Polis on Thursday declared a state of emergency.
And elsewhere, South Korea's ex-president Park Geun-hye has been released from prison after being granted a government pardon. Now, Park was embroiled in a corruption scandal involving some of the country's biggest firms. She is expected to remain in a Seoul hospital for now due to poor health. Jack Barton has more from Seoul.
Well, still in poor health. That's why she's staying at that hospital. We know during that almost 5 years in prison, she spent 3 trips into the hospital. During one of them, she had surgery on her shoulder. We are told that shoulder condition is still serious. On top of that, she has a herniated disc in her lumbar. We're told some dental conditions and mental health issues that need seeing to. And regardless of what one thinks of former President Park Geun-hye's policy or her involvement in that corruption scandal, it would perhaps be unsurprising, or it would be surprising if she didn't have mental health issues after all that she has been through, from president to arrest, impeachment, and that 22-year sentence that's only just been pardoned. So she says she'll spend at least another month in the hospital and she'll stay out of the spotlight in the meantime. The question is, though, where does she go after she gets out of hospital? She had a the equivalent of around $19 million fine from that sentencing, and that fine stands. The prosecutors confiscated her house while she was in jail to pay off some of that fine, so they auctioned it off. Right now she doesn't have a home. Reportedly her younger brother is looking for somewhere to stay. Whether she will accept that or not, is still in doubt. But the other big question is sort of the medical bills. They're mounting up. And while her former president ranking gives her security detail, it doesn't give her a pension, doesn't give her any funds. So you know, she wants to stay in the hospital, she wants to get treatment, but the question is how long can she afford to stay there, and when she leaves, where can she go?
The Sudanese Central Doctors Committee says 4 people were killed during a crackdown on anti-military protests on Thursday. Security forces fired tear gas and stun grenades as protesters marched through the capital Khartoum towards the presidential palace. Musab Mohsin Ibrahim reports from Khartoum.
Yesterday there was the protest and all the people went out on the street asking for the rights and democracy, and there was aggressive from the security force against the protester. So they closed all the bridge and they closed the internet and the cell phone communication and the international call. No one can receive any call or being communicated with anybody. There was repression by the security force. It was something unacceptable. They attacked even the journalists inside the studio and the hotels, and unfortunately there is 4 people got killed and a lot of injuries, and also they went in the hospital and searched for the protester, and they shot them with the tear gas and the sound bomb, so they threatened inside the hospital. So the situation was very critical. We didn't hear any press conference, but maybe today morning, maybe after 5 hours, we can hear anything. But there is not any reaction, and we can find this. The military are stuck in this situation, and they don't want to do anything, and they just want to do what they already did in the 25th of October, and they continue acting. And all people are rejecting what's going on in the streets. They don't anything. They don't want to negotiate. They don't want to be in a partnership with them. So they just want a civil government. This is what they're asking. But the government are not going to do this for them, and they'll still fight with the civilian in the streets. But the people are planning and continuing the protest next month.
Bahrain has appointed its first ambassador to Damascus since it cut ties with Syria over a decade ago. It is the latest in a growing number of Arab states to revive ties with a conflict-stricken country. Well, last year, Oman became the first Persian Gulf Arab state to reinstate an ambassador to Syria. The United Arab Emirates sent its foreign minister to Damascus last month to meet with President Bashar al-Assad. It has also called for Syria to readmit it to the Arab League. Now, Persian Gulf Arab countries downgraded or shut missions in Damascus after the Syria war broke out in 2011.
And European countries are reporting record-high daily new infections on Thursday with the rapid spread of the Omicron variant. The UK recorded some 189,000 new cases. It's about 6,000 higher than the previous record on Wednesday. Daily cases in Italy jumped to over 126,000. It was the first time the country has recorded more than 100,000 cases in one day. Greece reported a single-day record high of over 35,000 infections. It was the 3rd successive daily with infections more than tripling since the beginning of the week. Portugal reported record high of over 28,000 new cases. The country cut the mandatory isolation for the asymptomatic from 10 days to 7. Similar moves are seen in Spain and Britain due to a shortage of workers.
And Argentina has hit a daily record of new confirmed cases with more than 50,000 people testing positive. Local authorities said Thursday's figure surpassed the previous all-time high set in March. The health ministry also reported 35 deaths in the last 24 hours. The doctor said the situation in the capital Buenos Aires was serious and facing a very high level of contagion. Argentina has a population of 45 million and has registered more than 5.6 million cases and over 110,000 deaths since the beginning of the pandemic.
In South Africa, a 9-time curfew on people's movement has been lifted. The government announced the lifting of the midnight to 4 a.m. restriction in a statement on Thursday. Calls to lift the curfew have been mounting, especially in the hospitality sector, after the country overcame a 4th wave of infections. New infections dropped by nearly 30% last week, and hospitalization rates have been declining in almost every province. But mask wearing remains mandatory in public places. South Africa has been coping with new cases since the Omicron variant was first detected in the country last month. China's largest media group, CMG, is joining force with the country's largest shipbuilder, launching a new project on maritime protection and development.
And senior managers from the CMG and China State Shipbuilding Corporation witnessed the launching ceremony in Beijing. The project includes a maritime channel on the internet, a documentary, and a think tank, and plans to encourage innovation in building coastal cities.
China Media Group President Shen Haisheng said the new project will raise public awareness on ocean protection and boost maritime economic development. And with that, we come to the end of our New Year Eve special this hour. I'm Zhong Shi.
I'm Li Chuan in Beijing. Thank you so much. We will be back at the top of next hour, so see you then.
This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Bidding the 2021 goodbye, looking forward to the new year and the 2022 Beijing Olympic and Paralympic Winter Games. This is World Insight's special edition on the Games.
再过1个多月，北京冬奥会、冬残奥会就要开幕了，让更多人参与到冰雪运动中来。这也是奥林匹克运动的题中之意。我们将竭诚为世界奉献一届奥运盛会。世界期待中国，中国做好了准备。
That is part of the New Year message from the Chinese president. International Olympic Committee President Thomas Bach wrote recently that he is sure that China will deliver an outstanding Olympic Winter Games and that the Games will bring the world together in the spirit of peace, friendship, and solidarity. Test events and trainings have been ramped up over the past 2 months. Venues and accommodations are ready to welcome athletes from around the world. Meanwhile, with the pandemic still ongoing, the Beijing Olympic Organizing Committee is taking no chances with the safety of the competitors and staff. Coming up, an exclusive interview with Zhao Weidong, Director of the Media and Communication Department of the Beijing Organizing Committee for the 2022 Olympic and Paralympic Winter Games.
压线冲刺跑秒计时，希望通过筹办举办冬奥会，带动3亿人上冰雪。
Now I'm joined by Mr. Zhao Weidong, who is the Director of Media and Communications Department from the Beijing Organizing Committee for the 2022 Olympic and Paralympic Winter Games. Mr. Zhao, tell me more about what kind of preparations we're doing for the last mile almost.
确实是比较忙。
It's true that we're quite busy. We are now in a race against time. We are just over 30 days away from the opening ceremony of the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympic Games.
我们现在做的工作呢，
Currently, we are working on things on many fronts. One of them is the Flame Exhibition Tour and Torch Relay. As you know, the Flame Exhibition Tour and the Torch Relay are important ceremonies for the Olympic movement. We are now preparing for the Flame to be exhibited in some of the major provinces known for their snow and ice sports in early January. Then from February 2nd to February 4th, the Torch Relay will be carried to the 3 competition zones of Beijing, Yanqing, and Jiangjiakou.
Can we see it in the streets?
The torch will be relayed in certain fixed areas due to epidemic control. But of course, the audience can watch the torch relay on TV. There are 1,200 torchbearers in total.
Okay, well, that's a big team. So besides that, what else?
The opening and closing ceremonies that we are preparing with great urgency and care. These events are of great global interest, and I think you will be in for a nice surprise when the time comes.
A nice surprise. What kind of nice surprise would that be? I remember very clearly before the Beijing 2008 Olympic Games, there were a lot of different voices about the game, but once the opening ceremony started, everything comes into line. So people really wonder about this opening ceremony.
I think I'll leave it until the opening ceremony is officially held. Of course, there are some differences between the opening ceremony this time and the opening and closing ceremonies of 2008. After all, it is held amid a global pandemic, so we will cut out some unnecessary parts, but I think it'll be just as good.
Looking forward to it.
There is also the job of organizing the sports events and providing service support. As you know, the Olympic Games is a sports pageant with more than 2,800 athletes to compete with one another. So the organization of the event is very important to us, especially in the context of the global pandemic. Therefore, how to organize the event well and how to provide quality services to the athletes and all the invitees is one of the key tasks we are working on at the moment.
So how are you preparing for the best performances of every athlete participating in the Winter Games?
你这个问题提得非常好。我们从筹办之初呢，就确立了以运动员为中心的。
Good question. We have established the principle of putting athletes at the center from the very beginning. Our work is about providing quality services for athletes. As we all know, athletes come here to compete in certain venues, so we put a lot of effort in the construction of the venues. For example, the newly built National Speed Skating Oval is also known as the Ice Belt. We've laid the best ice in the hopes that athletes can skate at the fastest speed. We have even tested the rink in a recent test competition.
还有你看，在测试赛过程当中，我们首都体育馆的短道速滑。
During the test competition, Dutch athletes achieved their best results in the short track speed skating at the Capital Stadium. Chinese athletes also got their best ever results. This is what we do for the athletes, providing high quality facilities to unleash their full potential.
你也知道，疫情是对我们这次奥运会的一个很大的考验。那么我们
As you know, the pandemic represents a major test for us in holding the games. Together with the IOC and the IPC, we've developed 2 editions of playbooks, which are to ensure the smooth running of the event while ensuring the safety of all parties.
2版防疫手册当中呢，我们都是有2本。如果你注意到有2本
，There are 2 editions of the playbook. Each edition has its own book. One is for the athletes and their officials, and the other is for the interested parties. So, our epidemic prevention efforts are athlete-centered.
为中心另外呢，我们在这个气象服务方面
Since the Winter Olympic Games are likely to be affected by the weather, especially the snow sports, we have established a well-conceived weather monitoring system in Yanqing and Jiangjiakou to provide precise weather forecasts on a minute-by-minute basis and to an accuracy of 100 meters in elevation, so as to ensure that we can schedule the competition in a timely and reasonable manner according to the weather conditions and to give the athletes reasonable expectations.
Talking about predictability, there is enormous unpredictability as a result of COVID-19. One of the things is whether we're going to have audience and what is going to be the relationship in the space between the audience and the athletes. Tell us more about that.
On September 30th, along with the IOC and the IPC, we announced key policies on epidemic prevention and control, which clearly state that tickets will not be sold to spectators outside China or those subject to epidemic control measures within China. During the test competitions, we also had 2 trial runs for spectators, and the results are good from what we have seen so far. In addition, we issued 2 editions of the playbooks on October 25th and December 13th. These 2 playbooks have set out all the specific measures for the prevention and control of the epidemic. For example, we have set up several key measures, such as the remote prevention and control measures. In terms of remote control and prevention for inbound personnel, they have to carry out health monitoring at least 14 days before their departure for China. They need to report their health results on an app called My 2022 every day. They need to conduct 2 nucleic acid tests within 96 hours before their departure. They can only board the plane when the results are negative.
只有全部阴性之后才能登机这是远端防控。另外呢，我们认为呢，疫苗是防疫的一个重要。
Moreover, we believe that vaccines are an important means of epidemic prevention. So this time we have also clarified policies on vaccination. Except for a few medically exempt athletes who can enter the closed-loop management directly after being assessed by the experts, all other inbound personnel have to be fully vaccinated. Those who are not vaccinated have to stay in quarantine for 21 days. We strongly recommend them to take booster shots. We have also put in place effective measures after they entered China. For example, the only entry point we have established in China is the Beijing Capital International Airport. After arriving at the Capital International Airport, the inbound passengers have to undergo a COVID test. They can only carry on with their business in China when the test result is negative. Another very important feature in our policies is the strict closed-loop management. In the closed-loop management system, a closed loop has been formed through dedicated transportation tools between various venues of the Winter Olympics. All Olympic-related personnel work and live within the closed loop to ensure they are separated from the other members of the Chinese society.
A lot of the people compare Beijing Winter Games to Tokyo Summer Games because both games happened after COVID-19 started. However, others argue it's going to be very different, one game from the other. What is your view?
我们这一次这个疫情防控的政策呢，有我们的特点。
I think our epidemic prevention and control policies for the Winter Olympics have distinctive features which are aligned with the overall epidemic prevention and control strategy in China. Besides, we have also drawn on the successful experience of major sports events around the world. The effectiveness of our prevention and control measures were tested and proven in the 10 international test competitions we organized from October to December.
从检验的效果上来看，是行之有效的，所以我们对我们的这些防控措施呢很有信心。
As the 2022 Olympic and Paralympic Winter Games are just around the corner, Chinese are taking up winter sports in droves. Ski resorts, skating rinks, and many other winter sports venues around the nation are gearing up to welcome millions of visitors. 5 years ago, though, there were only 460 ski resorts in China. Now, there are nearly 800. To make skiing more accessible to the public, the whole country ramped up the construction of ski facilities. And some 2,000 primary and secondary schools across the nation have included winter sports in their curriculum. China is aiming to get 300 million people involved in games on the snow and ice.
我们希望通过筹办、举办冬奥会，带动3亿人上冰雪。
Many people are very curious about, Olympic Games under the new geopolitical landscape. Whether it will be politicized, whether it is fair to politicize Olympic Games. When the torch is being lit up, what should we have in mind in a way? How should we appreciate a real Olympic Games?
当今世界呢，人类面临的越来越多的共同的挑战，越来越成为一个命运的共同体。
In today's world, humanity is facing more and more common challenges and is increasingly becoming a community of a shared future. This requires us to stay united and join hands to meet the challenges all together. As a global sports event, the Olympic Games itself is a stage for athletes and sports fans from all over the world. On this stage, people from different countries can become more united. That's why the IOC has added the word together to the Olympic model this year, which I think is of particular significance. In an article that I recently read, Mr. Bach says that Beijing will be the first city ever in Olympic history to host both the winter and summer editions of the Olympic Games. The Olympic Winter Games of Beijing 2022 will be a moment to bring the world together in a spirit of peace, solidarity, and friendship. I very much agree with this statement. However, we've noticed that a few countries have already announced that they would not send officials to the Beijing Winter Olympic Games. But we've seen that a great majority of countries have shown a strong desire to participate in the Games, and many more global citizens have shown a strong interest in the Games. when the Olympic torch is lit up and when the Winter Olympics in Beijing is a success through the joint efforts of athletes and everyone in the world, the confrontational views that resist the Games and the proponents of politicizing sports will naturally disappear.
不和谐的这种声音，一些将体育政治化的一些主张会自然消弭的。
Higher, faster, stronger, and now together, right? This is something new about the Olympic spirit. How can the global audience be able to have access, the best access to the Winter Olympic Games this time?
我想呢，冬奥会呢和夏奥会呢，还是有些差别。冬季奥运运动呢和夏季运动。
I think there are still some differences between the Winter Olympics and the Summer Olympics. The sports played at the Winter and Summer Games also differ greatly. In terms of the sports themselves, winter sports are probably more audience-friendly and more challenging.
欣赏冬季运动的魅力。
China participated starting from 1980. Lake Placid, I remember that. However, it was years later before the first gold was won. Of course, the Olympic Games is not just about winning the gold medals, but rather participating. But how do you expect? You know, you're a Chinese yourself, even though you are working for the organizing committee. So how do you expect the performance of the Chinese team, Team China?
Like you said, China's participation in the Winter Olympics predates its participation in the Summer Olympics. China first participated in the Winter Olympics of Lake Placid of the United States in 1980. Then in 1984, China participated in the Summer Olympics in Los Angeles. As for the question of how do I look forward to the performance of Chinese athletes this time, I think we should leave it until the end of the Beijing Winter Olympics. We all look forward to the best performance of Chinese athletes and athletes from all over the world.
China has, in a way, illustrated the possibility of 300 million, 400 million people onto the ice, onto the snow. This is going to be a huge boost, of course, for the Winter Olympic cause. But, you know, what is the reality looking at China's overall geographical and the weather situation? How do you expect that to happen, Mr. Zhao?
中国呢是一个体育大国。
I think China is a big country for sports. In the process of preparing for the Winter Olympic Games, China also rallied behind getting more people participating in winter sports. In other words, we hope to lead 300 million people to take up ice and snow sports through the preparation of the Beijing Winter Games. We can now see in China that this goal is gradually becoming a reality. In the past, winter sports were mainly popular in northern China, especially in the northeastern provinces. But now, we also find indoor skating rinks in places as far south as Shenzhen. Personally speaking, I am also a beneficiary.
So what kind of sports do you take?
When I was a kid, I had no idea about winter sports. During these years of preparation for the Beijing Winter Olympics, I also benefited from the rising popularity of ice and snow sports in China. For example, I learned to ski and occasionally skied on the intermediate slopes.
Wow, congratulations. How long did you learn in order to make that happen? I'm trying to learn, but I'm not, a little bit clumsy.
用了大概半年多吧。
It took me about half a year. Of course, I'm still an amateur and a long way behind those professionals. In the process of preparing for the Winter Olympic Games, I've become part of the 300 million people who have taken up winter sports.
What
was it like for you when you feel, you know, I could really ski now?
第一次上滑道的时候呢，是摔了几跤。
The first time I went on the slopes, I fell a few times and was very frustrated. After skiing several times, I gradually got the hang of it and realized the charm of skiing.
You know, when we have the games on, and when everybody is looking at the games, you know, what can we learn? Because you said Beijing is already the second time hosting an Olympic Games. I'm sure this time is going to be very different from the first time. I want to have some of your takeaways already 1 month before the Winter Games.
这一次筹办奥运会呢，我们感觉到呢，我们在筹办之前
In preparing for the Winter Olympic Games, we've also adhered to the 4 leading concepts proposed by President Xi Jinping. green, inclusive, open, and clean. The 4 concepts have been followed throughout the whole process of the preparation. In fact, they are highly consistent with China's national development philosophy, both economically and socially. Moreover, in the face of the pandemic, President Xi Jinping also put forward the idea of hosting a simple, safe, and splendid Olympic event. It is under these concepts and requirements that we have made meticulous preparations for the Beijing Winter Olympic Games and have received high recognition from the IOC and IFs. I think this has also laid a very good foundation for the upcoming Winter Olympics in Beijing.
所以我想呢，这也为我们在即将举办的北京冬奥会呢打下了一个很好的基础。
Tell me more about, for the last mile, how are you preparing to help, to support, and to provide your service to the media from around the world?
我想呢，我们对媒体呢，
I think we have provided thoughtful information services to the media. Information services are made available to all domestic and foreign media. We are treating everyone equally in terms of information services associated with the Olympic Games. For example, we have provided services to the media in various ways, such as responding to their interview requests as soon as possible, organizing media visits to the venues and group interviews, and holding a weekly press conference to release important information. We also provide information services to the media through our newsletter. All in all, I think the media has a mission to report the games. What we need to do is to facilitate the process by offering them all kinds of convenience. By serving the media well, we can also communicate the wonderful messages from the Beijing Winter Olympic Games to the rest of the world.
总而言之呢，我想媒体它有它的工作需求，它是要报道，我们只要服务好它的报道，为它的报道提供各种方便，那么我们就真正的把媒体服务好，也真正的能够把北京冬奥会传播好。
Thank you so much, Mr. Zhao. All the best to your work and certainly to the Beijing Winter Olympic Games.
We 我们希望通过筹办举办冬奥会，带动3亿人上冰雪。
Today I'm in Shanghai at the CIIE. This is on site at COP15. It's a corner of Guangzhou. Hainan, the new river, Chengdu research base of giant panda breeding in Beijing. Thanks for watching. Bye for now. I will be here tomorrow. It's amazing. People have never seen such an expressive person from China on the ice. That really breaks the record, quote unquote.
能够滑吗？有些时候嘛也不够滑一点，但是还是。 慢慢的来，我自己这样想的，不着急啊，好的生活慢慢来，是吧？
So I could take flying car here in Hainan.
Definitely, that's our intention.
There's so many things to do in our society. Why people like you put so much attention on cats? Thought your fan might want to confess herself rather than you say she is my fan. Beijing's long preparations for the Winter Games are nearly complete after the city won the hosting rights in 2015. Despite the global pandemic hampering travel, there are high expectations for winter athletes around the world to deliver their best performances at the Beijing Games. Now, with the Games just over a month away, winter sports experts are already beginning to evaluate the preparations for the Games. Let's hear from Ivo Fariani, president of the International Bobsleigh and Skeleton Federation.
Me and my colleagues, we are preparing these games since 7 years, when Beijing won the bid, and then we start to coordinate our work with the organizing committee, BOCOC. And I want to say, the work with BOCOC was one of the best cooperation ever with the organizing committee. A great cooperation, and then, okay, we have to face some problems, but always with open mind. That was a great moment. So we approached
would you say so? I mean,
way.
maybe people would say, "Oh, Ivo just being polite in saying so." Were there
No.
stories you can share with us how it works?
No. Everybody called me sharp, because I said the things very sharp. So I don't have too many filter in this regard. So, and frankly speaking, today with the board of the organizing committee, I said, we are friends. Normally we fight till the last second, because there's something to pull in the regards and so on. But in particular with John Dong, Mr. John Dong and Xuan in particular, we are very good friends. Anyway, discussion always, because we have some issue, but always, frankly speaking, very open mind. So what I have to say, I'm surprised. We have the last mile of the marathon. And the only thing I have to say, don't lose the focus, because everything is good at the moment.
How do you expect the athletes would perform?
It's important to understand for athletes, when they understood the things, when they are focused in the goal, they don't care. They are already in their mind bubble and then physical bubble. So for them, it don't change too much.
So you think there's going to be terrific performance this year?
You will see
2022.
You will see fantastic results in Beijing. Don't think that the level will be lower than before. No. They will be extremely high. You will see some records that wow, they did record also in this particular condition. Of course, because the athletes, they want to win. So not because it's a pandemic, they reduce the level of training on the level of effort to win. They want to win. For winning, you have to work more than the 100%. So, and then they will be ready in Beijing in February to show their capacity. No doubt about it.
We all have to adjust. The speed of adjusting almost decides on the fate of the speed to succeed in a way. So it seems that you are the first to remind your athletes to be able to adjust and also triumph in a way.
Exactly. The word, I think the fundamental word is flexibility. We have to be flexible. Sometimes people say, oh, but we always did in this way. No. When you think that nothing can change, you're already blocked in your position. So everything can change. You see, with a crazy virus, nobody can see. We have to change our habits, our life, our economy, everything. So our freedom is different. And so that's the way to approach the life. Everything can change tomorrow and after tomorrow again. So if you are not flexible, you're out. And in these regards, I think a good learning was from Agenda 2020 from President Bach, flexibility and able to change. And
it's so important. It is
in
so
the front
important.
in front of the office of Thomas Bach, president of IOC, there is a phrase on the wall: change or be changed.
Well said. Bidding the 2021 goodbye, looking forward to the new year and the 2022 Beijing Olympic and Paralympic Winter Games. This is World Insight's special edition on the Games.
This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello everyone, welcome to another hour of CGTN's year-end special. I'm Zhong Shi.
And I'm Li Qiuyuan. Now, Chinese President Xi Jinping has delivered his annual New Year address. He highlighted China's achievements in the past year. Let's now take a look.
Xi Jinping called 2021 a year of exceptional significance. China has met its first centenary goal to become a moderately prosperous society. It's now advancing towards the second centenary goal to become a modern socialist country by 2049, the 100th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China.
2个100年奋斗目标历史交汇，我们开启了全面建设社会主义现代化国家新征程，正昂首阔步行进在实现中华民族伟大复兴的道路上。
China eliminated extreme poverty in 2021. Xi Jinping attributed this to the Communist Party of China and the Chinese people. He also said this is a contribution to the world.
经过一代代接续努力，以前贫困的人们现在也能吃饱肚子，穿暖衣裳，有学上，有房住，有医保。
In July 2021, the CPC celebrated its 100th anniversary of founding. Xi Jinping, who's also the General Secretary of the CPC Central Committee, called on the party and the people to forge ahead towards China's development goals. The president also highlighted China's progress in environmental protection, space exploration, and the fight against COVID-19. Looking ahead, he called for global solidarity in fighting the pandemic.
我们将竭诚为世界奉献一届奥运盛会。世界期待中国，中国做好了准备。
With just about a month to go to the Beijing Winter Olympics and the Paralympics, Xi Jinping said greater public involvement in winter sports contributes to the Olympic movement, and China is ready to host a spectacular games. The president also extended his greetings to the nation and the Chinese living overseas.
And 2022 is still hours away from much of the world, but some countries are already bringing in the new year.
That's right. At this hour, Northeast Asia is celebrating.
So Japan, South Korea, and the DPRK have now officially just stepped into 2022.
In Japan, New Year is one of the most important holiday periods where families get together and eat good food.
Absolutely. Now helping us to ring in the new year is Jack Barton, who is live for us in Seoul. Good to see you there, Jack. It's just almost over the midnight, so Happy New Year to you. What were some of the biggest stories coming from that part of the world in 2021, and how are people feeling about 2022?
Well, Happy New Year to you. And perhaps the interesting thing about the year that's been is the lack of big stories in South Korea, and perhaps the gratitude that a lot of people have had for that. Of course, over the past few years, we've had what many people thought was a near war experience with the DPRK when Donald Trump was president. We had the impeachment and the imprisonment of former President Park Geun-hye, who was just pardoned in the last 24 hours. And we've had so many big events. And in fact, the last year, you could say, was sort of event-free in South Korea. For the longest time also, the COVID numbers remained very low and the country remained very open. But all of that has been changing, unfortunately, very recently with the infection rate rising. And that's why, even though it is a Happy New Year and Happy New Year to you and all the viewers, it is one of the dullest New Years probably South Korea has ever experienced. The businesses, most of them closing at 9 o'clock. Social distancing now at 4 people at a maximum. None of the fireworks you would normally expect, none of the crowds out, all the businesses closed. Traditionally, there's a ringing of the bell. They've even stopped that for the last couple of years. And even many people go to the East Coast to watch the sunrise in the morning, and they've been told, please don't do that. We're going to live stream it. You can watch it on the internet. And just before midnight, the government announcing even more restrictions coming in the weeks ahead, putting a bit of gloom. Having said that, of course, many people getting the chance just to stay at home and be with their family tonight, which is where many people want to be, given it's about -7 degrees outside. Not a great night to go watching fireworks anyway. So for many people with their family, it's still a very happy new year, and hoping for a better new year that's perhaps as politically uneventful as this one, but with some better news on the pandemic front.
Well, I guess it's a low-key welcome of 2022 therein. So thank you so much, Jack, for coming on live on New Year's Day. We really appreciate it. Happy New Year.
All right, as Japan welcomes 2022, our reporter Terence Terashima in Tokyo takes stock of the country's key events this year.
Many Japanese use words like restless, chaos, and anxiety to describe the year 2021. Tokyo and many of the prefectures across the country were under some form of state of emergency for 9 months of the year, while the government measures to contain the spread of the virus and hospital beds failed. At one time, 130,000 people self-treated themselves at home, and many lonely deaths were reported across the country, and the criticism mounted against the Suga administration, and also for him to push for the host the Summer Olympics under this state of emergency, and as the number rose to 25,000 cases a day. The scandal-tainted Olympics ended without much trouble, but many Japanese feel that they've been sacrificed for the event, which Suga's approval rating plunged and led to his resignation.
And now, on the first day of the new year, the world's biggest free trade deal will take effect. Let's now find out more with Mr. Yang Xiyu, Senior Fellow at the China Institute of International Studies. Thank you so much for coming in on New Year's Day. So let's talk about this. The RCEP is expected to bring down trade barriers for most countries in the Asia-Pacific region, right? How do you think Japan will use this opportunity to revive its economy?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And I think the RCEP will be a great gift for Japanese economy for the fiscal year of 2022, simply because of the weak performance of the Japanese economy now. During the past year, the Japanese economy has been lower than expected. And unfortunately, the upcoming fiscal year of 2022 will suffer from the even further lower growth of GDP than this year. Therefore, the Japanese government has been passed the additional budget to stimulate the economy. However, given the background of the terrible high ratio of the public debt to GDP, the large-scale stimulate by the budget deficit will implant great potential risks for Japanese economy. So in short, it's a double-edged sword to Japanese economy and Japanese people. However, the RCEP really provides a great momentum to stimulate the Japanese economy, of course also the Chinese economy and the related others, for the positive growth for the coming year. So I think a double-edged sword plus a really positive, great momentum waiting ahead for Japanese economy.
All right, we're running out of time. We're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much for your perspectives and insights, Mr. Yang Xiyu, joining us here in the studio. And now CGTN will continue this year-end special as more countries gear up to greet 2022. And our colleagues in London will be picking up the coverage and countdown from here. The Big Ben is going to usher in 2022 very soon.
Absolutely. That does it for Choyuan and me. On behalf of the entire team here, we thank you so much for your company and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hey guys, welcome to this special New Year's edition of The Vibe on CGTN. I'm Julian Wacken.
And hello everyone, I'm Louisa Lee. Happy to have all of you joining us on this last day of 2021.
And we're also thrilled to be joined by our old friends as well as new friends here today as we disco into 2022.
This is so exciting, Julian. This is The Vibe's first New Year celebration, and it's also our first time for the two of us coming to our viewers out here on location.
We just heard from the band Fool and Idiot in the opening act, and we're also going to be talking to the lead vocalist Eric Tai.
Also tonight, musician Daniel Truman, Echo Contemporary Ensemble, and Taylor Shop will also be joining us as we usher the new year with all of you.
Now, last year, coronavirus was the most searched word in the world. Guess what search topped coronavirus in 2021?
Julian, I got this one down. Netflix, Squid Game. Right?
Well, you have to remind me to watch that. Close, but it was actually coronavirus vaccine. We've been stabbed, we've been jabbed, we've self-isolated, we've quarantined, but the best way to protect ourselves is, of course, be happy and keep a positive state of mind.
Absolutely, and that is how we intend to mark the last day of 2021 and ringing the fabulous, exciting 2022. Oh, I just can't wait, Julian.
Then I'm thrilled to introduce the Vibes version of the Booster Shot, an evening of nothing but music to your ears that will send you to Cloud 9 for the rest of 2022. Joining us right now is vocalist Eric Tai of Fool and Idiot. The last job of my 2021 was in the form of music. Why didn't I think of it earlier, right? Oh Why, by the way, is the name of the song that you just performed. It's part of a new album called Year of Fate. What does fate have to do with it?
We've been experiencing a lot of things the last 2 years, a lot of experience, and also the pandemic. So I think that Fool and Idiot is changing, and or we could call it is growing. We launched our new album, our second album, Year of Fate, this year. Our audience, or not just only our audience, may notice that our music genre changed a lot, but the meaning of music and how we make music do change a lot to us. So except for the music genre, I think that we are just growing to try to strike a balance, our career and our daily lives, and try to become better.
And your band has made a break in the show, The Big Band, a few years back. How would you describe your band today?
I think that when you want to be more sophisticated, more musical and not too contextualized compared to our first album, 5:10 a.m. It doesn't mean that the lyrics is not important, but we want to change, and we want to strike a balance.
Tell us what else we can all work on for 2022.
Oh, actually we have a tour recently, and it's just January 1 in Chengdu, so I hope that maybe some friends can take their relatives, their families, their friends to enjoy our show together on January 1, 2022.
Thank you very much, Eric.
Thank you, Eric. And Julian, looking back at 2021, I'm surprised that we actually had so much fun together. What would be the most memorable moment for you this year?
Well, that's a hard one. I'd say I've had an NPS, a near paradise experience. I went to this bookstore called the Mofan Shiji bookstore, and it was an old Episcopal church that was converted into a bookstore. And as you know, I grew up in a library, and so the smell of dusty books, all the old furniture, and all of these antiques just really brings me back to my childhood. And inside this bookstore, I saw this stained glass window that was almost exactly the same as the one that I had in my childhood home. And as soon as I walked in, the sun beamed through the stained glass window, and I was enveloped in this warm light, and I was like, am I dead? Plus, I saw a copy of T.S. Eliot inside the bookstore. I also found a letter written by Victor Hugo. I also found this copy of Chinese Nobel laureate Mo Yan's Da Feng in this beautiful traditional Chinese binding. So it was just unbelievable. It was exactly like what Johannes Louis Borges said, I've always imagined paradise to be some kind of a library. Now that was my near.
And throughout this time, of course, because we weren't able to travel, I really had the chance to explore Beijing to the core. I signed up to all the exciting events that you can think of, from wake surfing to hitting the racetracks to cooking up a storm with chefs in the kitchen.
Images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving. The difference is not always obvious. It has to be discovered. There are always different sides to a story. We put the focus on the details. To see more, to understand better. CGTN. See the difference.
I think we all agree that we're very grateful to have this job that allows us to go out there and experience so many different things in life that people normally wouldn't be able to. I've also been very lucky to go and take part in the annual Wuzhen Theater Festival each year, set in this beautiful ancient water town. It's really extraordinary to see the festival grow and to see our show grow with the festival. Now this year the festival thankfully resumed after a year of hiatus, and you could tell from the turnout that people were eager to get out and get back to normality. And everywhere you go, people were performing, they were singing and dancing in the streets. And remember, we had Chinese opera singer Tian Haojiang sing a cappella on our show live in Wuzhen. It was completely spontaneous and unexpected. I think Wuzhen is really as much a window to all the colors, shapes, and sizes of life as it is a window for the world to see China. That is China coming from this long and beautiful tradition, and China at its most youthful and unexpected. And here are some moments from this year's Wuzhen Theater Festival.
Hey guys, welcome to The Vibe on CGTN. I'm Julian Wagan.
And I'm Sun Siqi. We're here to bring you the 8th edition of Wuzhen Theater Festival.
What is the cabaret charm?
When we founded the festival, the dream was to create a window where the world could see China and China could see the world through the lens of theater.
而我们希望用这样的一个节，让全世界。
We hope such a festival will allow the world to see the culture, the self-confidence, the goodwill, and the beauty of Chinese.
We care about our community. We want to change the society in a better way. So through our art.
Oh sole mio, più belle.
And I was just lost for words when I heard those guys play. Speaking of music that goes straight to your heart, that was brought to us by the award-winning band AUKUS Contemporary Ensemble from the China Conservatory of Music. Welcome, Wuzhen.
Thank you.
Welcome to The Vibe. That was amazing, right?
That was absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And to help us, liven up and brighten the day, give us 3 words that you hope to describe the year ahead in 2022.
Okay, 3 words. One word is hope, 希望, and health, 健康, and peace, 和平.
And why those 3 words? Can you elaborate a little bit?
健康是因为现在是全球有疫情嘛，所以呢，希望大家能够在明年是健健康康，不要染上疾病。然后和平，就是希望大家在地球这个家园和平相处，也不要战乱。然后还有一个就是希望，希望就是希望明年越来越好，大家事业蒸蒸日上。
He has such a selfless dream, a selfless wish.
Very, very positive.
Right. Well, how about you, Julian? How would you describe, your new year going forward?
I would say DCT, dreams come true.
Wow. Okay. Good positivity all around. I'm taking your 3 selfless dreams and your dream come true. I'm stuffing in my pocket. I'm going to take it to 2022. In recent years, we have seen a rise of the so-called China Chic trend, which can be simply translated as Chinese design products, as it reflects the country's traditional culture. The young generation in China have grown up in an era of constant progress, newness, and innovation, yet they're also seeking for a sense of authentic identity and self-expressionism.
That's right, China Chic is an outlet for them, but it's also helping them reconnect with their roots. If you pay attention to the streets, you'll notice that Hanfu wearing movement is more alive than ever before, and traditional Chinese culture is made cooler than ever. Take a look.
大家好，我是国风手艺人艳红。因为我平时爱用铜片来制作头饰，恰巧那一次铜片就没有了。吃饭的时候，我就无意之间看到墙角呢有易拉罐，就想着哎，能不能用易拉罐来代替铜片？
食材它其实是没有国界的。 在这个糖里面，我可以任意的把我想要的元素输入进去，然后把它变成我们自己中国的饭糖。
它在水下呈现出那样一种非常柔和柔美的这样一种，像服装的这样一种呈现，是一些动画都做不出来的那样一种效果。
I think this is definitely my favorite dress of the year. I like the fact that it has this traditional Changshan color to it, but the cut over here and the patterns is definitely modern.
民族舞是那种很悠扬、很柔美的那种感觉，但是街舞的话，它可能就是它的卡点、它的力度，就完全和中国舞是完全不一样，截然不同的舞种。 碰撞到一起会有一种矛盾感，矛盾美，我是这样觉得。
Boy, I love that. Beauty in conflict. It's always such a breath of fresh air to see traditional sounds collide with young mindsets and to see how the young people today pass on their legacy of traditional music with their point of view.
Exactly, and without further ado, let's have the Echo Contemporary Ensemble spice up our show furthermore with another tune.
And we're only hours away before the ball drops for the New Year 2022, but we're also counting down to another momentous event, the Beijing Winter Olympics, that's going to turn China into a world stage of sports again. And here at CGTN, in true Olympian spirit, we've challenged 4 musicians to compose a Winter Olympic theme song together. We have Sutter, who does an incredible job bringing the sounds of modern core and elements of winter, and Mikko Liu Wei with his awesome electronic vibes. They're joined by Dr. Victor from Iceland and Carlo Ficini from Italy. It's not easy harmonizing music and cultures from such different, cultures.
Yeah, I can just imagine, but they make it sound so organic. The music voyage is consisted of 4 parts, with each musician making a minute of it, and it's like a relay. They pass it down to the next musician, where they'll pick up from where the previous one left off. From electronic to classical music, from traditional tunes, a Mongolian horsehead fiddle, to the sounds of drums, it's a feast of musical beats and styles.
Why don't we have a theme song like that
We
on
should
the
have one like that.
right? Anyhow, let's chime in on the sounds of the Beijing Winter Olympics.
The race is on to complete CGTN's Winter Olympics musical relay. 4 music producers from around the world have taken up the challenge.
特色的一个这个声响展现给全世界。
尤其是第2棒，这个承上启下的这个工作是特别的重要。
They have 4 weeks to break musical barriers together, despite being thousands of miles apart.
So I think this idea from CGTN, combining all these artists from around the world for a special song for the Winter Olympics in Beijing 2022 is an amazing idea.
The last baton pass is for me. I'll take it.
A series of mini documentaries puts the composers in the spotlight as they attempt to make an Olympic anthem in a relay format. Taking you behind the scenes, tracking their creative journey.
采雪的声音，然后把这个声音响加入到我的音乐里。
我觉得他开了一个非常好的一个引子，可以让我接着他的思路能往后发展。
Coming from Iceland, we have a lot of different elements, and the nature here is really amazing. We have snow, northern lights, and even volcanoes. So I tried in my baton and my part to combine all these elements in combination with the first and second baton to create something unique, and I hope you like it.
An exciting new way for music from East and West to meet and mix. Interpret the spirit of the Olympics through music. A musical relay for the Winter Olympics, only on CGTN.
音乐冬奥，我们在 CGTN 等你进见。
We're now joined by Ludi of the incredible band Taylor Shop. They caused a sensation this year on the variety talent show in China for giving traditional Chinese instruments such as the pipa and the guqin modern interpretations. Ludi, welcome to our show.
你好，老师好。
Welcome to the Vibes.
You know, when I was listening to your music, to your band, I could just imagine my great-grandma rocking to your music on her rocking chair. Tell us, how did you come up with this idea of rocking to the guqin and the pipa?
就是把它们本身的属性先放下，然后把它们当做一个声音，然后和我成长的经历以及我看到和我思考的文化，把它放在一起。 然后就变成了这个样子。
Ludi, like you talk about these nostalgic sounds. Did you grow up with these sounds with your grandparents, like you mentioned, or with your parents?
这些声音是我们不管是主动或者是被动，这些声音一直就在我们身边，所以说它应该是比较熟悉的声音。
Got such a knack for discovering music everywhere around us. Thank you very much, Ludi.
Thank you.
谢谢。
Well, I love the fact that today people can celebrate the old and the new, whether it's through creativity and fusion in music or in fashion arts.
It's really what our show, The Vibe, is all about.
And I was so pleasantly surprised, Louisa, to see Facebook friend requests from people all over the world, from viewers in Colombia, Indonesia, from Japan, South Africa, and places that I like to go and visit myself. There's such an overwhelming interest in what's happening in China right now. And this year, being hard to travel for everyone, instead, we decided to travel in Beijing's backyard to talk to ambassadors to China from different places around the world. I want to show you some of their impressions of China and the places that they want to visit. Take a listen.
It was in Gansu province, the Dongguan, the grotto, the caves, the Buddhist caves, they are beautiful. I also liked, for example, very much in Yunnan province. I went to Dali, Lijiang, and Shangri-La, which are marvelous. A few weeks ago, I went to Guilin in the south, beautiful place also.
Have a very beautiful residence here.
Okay, thank you so much. My favorite season in China is spring and fall.
What are some of the most memorable places you visited in China?
Of course, Great Wall. When I arrive here, you have to go and see Great Wall, Forbidden City. So that's one of the must if you are here in Beijing, and
yes.
Of course, Temple of Heaven. But one of the memorable is for me is to visit Chengdu and see panda.
China is a very big country, very diverse, very beautiful. Every place has its own charm, its own history. Been to Xinjiang. I've been to Shanghai, I've been to South and Guangxi. Recently, when I went to Guangxi, I took 2 days off to go and see Guilin.
Okay.
Those beautiful mountains and those rivers. So I really admired and appreciated the very unique landscape.
Well, you might have heard of the 1,000 Hen Guanyin, right?
Yes, I saw this beautiful performance of the 1,000 Hen Guanyin on the CCTV Spring Festival Gala, and it was incredible.
Well, not to top the CCTV Spring Festival Gala, but our next band, Taylor Shop, will bring you the title song from their album 1,000 Faces. Let's give it up for Taylor Shop. Louisa, does it ever happen to you that music makes you ravenous?
Julian, trust me, I think about food all the time, 24/7, especially anything that's fried or steamed in baskets like dim sum.
Oh, I love dim sum too. The great thing about Beijing is that you can find food from any cities from around China and even from around the world, really. Ever since we started our new show, I've been following and checking out the restaurants on our show.
And I also know that you have somehow made your way into a famous chef's kitchen.
Boy, that was a treat. I was really astonished by Chef Jack Ouyang's food at the Hometown Palace. I asked him to create a few dishes inspired by the painting, Monet's painting Luncheon on the Grass. And when Jack came up with was amazing. He had these Peking duck wrapped in crepes that had been steamed on a jasmine tea bath. And he also made this tuna sashimi that imitated the flashing naked lady in the painting. And he had live ants crawling on the dessert, speaking of taboos for the taste bud. But my favorite was his soup bun served on a statue, which was literally like a tango on your tongue. And this is getting my appetite worked up already. Next, let's take a look at some of the other gastronomic delights from our show in 2021.
This is Flavors of Beijing, a food crawl exploring the international cuisines bewitching local and expat foodies in China's capital. My name is Ling Ling, and I'm a foodie at heart.
The ingredients that we use are very Southeast Asian.
This is really good. It's crispy outside but soft inside. So this is the iconic stuff in your restaurant.
Yeah.
Look at these. I'll start with the satay beef. I wish you guys could smell all the spices right now. It's so good.
What a beautiful sunset on a Tuesday afternoon. Locked down in my hotel room, thinking about you. Got a view of the city and reminds me of the times in our better lives. I was doing right with you. My baby say that I ain't got a clue about the universe that I am flying to. And she says, baby, I don't think we're ready. Putting all the pressure on you to come home. Baby, let your head down now. Once more, baby, let your head down. I know, baby, let your head down. Baby, let your head down for me. What a beautiful sunset on a Tuesday afternoon. Touchdown in the city, and it's way too good to be true. And she says, baby, I don't think you're ready. Getting all the pressure, I'm putting all the pressure on you to come home. Baby, let your head down. Once more, baby, let your head down. I know, baby, let your head down. Baby, let your head down. It's been a minute, seems like a year without you here. Rest your eye, close your eyes, and let your head down for me. What a beautiful sunset on a Monday afternoon. Touchdown in the city, and it's way too good to be true. So come home, baby. once more. Baby, let your head down, let your head down now. Oh, baby, let your head down, let your head down. Baby, let your head down for me, baby.
And that was Let Your Hair Down by Daniel Truman, a New Zealand musician who has been performing here in Beijing for 4 years and counting. Daniel, you have graced many venues, from the hotel you're based in, from Great Wall events to other music events as well. People say adversity sparks creativity. What are your thoughts about that? I know you created that song during quarantine here in China.
Yeah, so my inspiration really came from being in a confined space, I guess, especially over quarantine coming back into China. So I find a lot of creativity when I'm alone. And I guess in that time you kind of express more of your inner feelings and you really dig deep inside yourself to find those hidden reserves of information. So it makes songwriting a lot more fun, a lot more emotional, and quite an experience.
Describe to us what this moment feels like for you as we cross over into 2022.
I think 2022 is going to bring a lot of opportunities. I'm really excited. I've got a lot of energy temped up to go, so I'm looking forward to it.
And me too. Thank you so much, Daniel, for putting the end to probably one of the happiest days of 2021 for us.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Daniel.
Thank you.
So glad to be joined by friends old and new from near and far on this last day of 2021. We both love to travel, but the pandemic has really shut the door on all of us these past 2 years.
That is so true. However, we managed to still tell inspiring stories and pass on the positivity of the world through our show.
It's really a kind of global perspective on things, isn't it? And really beautiful in terms of doing this for the Olympics. It's kind of coming together of peoples from the world.
Today we're in Guguletu, one of Cape Town's townships, and we're here to find out everything there is about Peninsula dance.
Town of mega department stores, I've arrived at an unusually old building. I feel like I could bathe in it and smell great for a week. That's how I feel. They've just told me that this is 6,000 yen, which is just under $60 just for one.
Vietnam Modern Music Festival this year is a celebration of life. Its motto, do what you want.
This unique shoe is handmade, cut and sewn from rawhide leather, and now they've become even more trendy and fashionable.
Having seen so many marvelous stories that we're able to put out there this year on the show, I truly feel complete and content. I just hope that we will all stand together to overcome this pandemic and to let it awaken us to see our world from a different perspective and to fully appreciate the love and the power behind each dish, each piece of art, each song and dance, and the music inside of all of us.
Well said, Julian. So let's carry on that positivity and that blissful and happy vibe into the new year. Here I want to thank our entire team for throwing such a big party for our viewers on this New Year's Eve, and thank you all the musicians for providing the great tunes and upbeat energy.
And for all of you out there from different parts of the world, the party has just started. Have a happy New Year, and we'll see you all in 2022.
Happy New Year, Happy New Year, Happy New Year from the cloud. We are singing, we are dancing, Happy New Year to you all. Happy New Year, Happy New Year, Happy New Year from the cloud. We are singing, we are dancing, Happy New Year to you all. Happy New Year, Happy New Year, Happy New Year from the cloud. We are singing, we are dancing, Happy New Year to you all.
This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello, welcome to CGTN and our special coverage of the new year. I'm Jamie Owen.
And I'm Robin Dwyer. 2021 is a year that many of us will be glad to say goodbye to.
It all began with hope that those vaccines would bring an end to the pandemic and is ending with many New Year Eve celebrations rather muted to try and contain a fresh wave of infections.
With our colleagues around the world in Beijing, Nairobi and Washington, we'll look back at the events that shook the world and set the stage for 2022.
Of course, it's already underway, a new year in the Pacific island of Kiribati to Sydney in Australia. We have already watched 2022 unfold there.
In parts of Asia, the dawn of the new year is now just minutes away. We're counting down and watching the skies light up over Beijing, Shanghai and Hong Kong.
Well, in just a moment, we're going to take you to Shanghai, where they're celebrating a rather extraordinary year of space exploration. But before we go there, let's first talk to our correspondent, Gu Tianxi in Beijing, where, of course, the 2022 Winter Olympics will begin in just a matter of weeks. Tianxi, you're at the Olympic Towers. Of course, a huge year for China as Beijing gears up for the Olympic Winter Games.
Well,
we can certainly see
I can't hear you clearly right now, but I would like to introduce the situation here in Beijing. And as we all know, this is a really extraordinary year for Beijing, and it's the year of the Winter Olympic host in Beijing. And also, this year's countdown event is related to the Winter Olympic. The tower behind me is called the Olympic Tower, and it's now the new landmark of Beijing since it was established in 2016. And the countdown light show has already started, and it's a 10-minute show from all the way to the countdown. And this show has three parts. The first one is showcasing Beijing's cultural heritage, such as the Great Wall and the Temple of Heaven and the Temple, the Forbidden City, and also some intangible cultural heritage like the Peking Opera. And the second part of the light show is anticipating to the Winter Olympics. For example, the light show will cover the ice and snow sports such as skating, skiing, and other like curling, of course. And the third part is welcoming the year of 2022. And also, I want to tell you more about this tower. Actually, it was established, as I have mentioned before, was established in 2016, the year after Beijing won the bid to host the Winter Olympic in 2015. And it is at the central axis, the north end of central axis at Beijing. And this spot actually became the landmark after it was established. And the design concept is from the life of tree and the Olympic rings, as the five smaller towers are growing all the way up to the sky, as the branches also resembling the Winter Olympics green development concept. And as you can see here now, because of the pandemic, and the audience are not allowed to gather together to hear and to.
Tianxi, we're going to leave you there and those extraordinary pictures because we can see the countdown has already started in Beijing. So let us watch the last few seconds of the old year 2021 slip away as China enters this new year 2022. Here are the pictures, and they are extraordinary.
See cherry future 一起来， Together 一起向未来。
Well, it is 2022 there, if not here in Europe. Let's see if we can next show you the live images from Hong Kong. Here we are. Now, we're expecting something rather special here. Of course, Hong Kong rings in the new year with an extraordinary light show around Victoria Harbour, centering on the countdown display on that enormous facade of the newly opened museum, which we reported on some time ago. That looks absolutely spectacular, doesn't it? Hong Kong and 2022.
Well, a spectacular light show there in Hong Kong as it rings in 2022. Also ringing in the new year is Shanghai. Our correspondent Chen Tong is watching the celebrations there. So, Tong, these celebrations could be described as being out of this world because it's a celebration of space exploration that's captivating people this year.
Happy New Year from Shanghai. Well, I'm now at Shanghai's Xingtiandi, an iconic landmark in town. It's a renovated commercial complex with the Shanghai classic Shikongmen style architecture. And what has been special this year is the special theme of spacewalk this year. And you can see probably here is the huge astronaut sculpture. And I talked to the designer earlier, and he told me that the reason why we put such special spacewalk theme this year at the New Year Eve is China's great achievements over the past year in space exploration. We made over 50 times of space launch, and we continued to build our space station. And of course, as you can see here, shopping malls open until the midnight because China's consumption sector has seen a robust recovery. In the first 3 quarters of the year, China's GDP growth recorded a year-on-year growth of nearly 10%. So despite the pandemic, there are still many people coming by to celebrate the new year. Back to you.
Well, Tong, wishing you a happy new year as well. We are all admiring your most wonderful hat. What's the significance of it?
Well, we are now in the year of 2022, and that means we are only a month away from China's Lunar New Year, and the next year will be Year of the Tiger. And the Shanghai local government said earlier that the spring rush will start in about 2 weeks, and it's estimated that more than 20 million tickets will be sold during the spring rush this year, and that will be an obvious recovery from last year's figure. So China's well control of the COVID-19 pandemic has made the economy to continue to grow.
Chen Tong in Shanghai, thank you very much indeed. Well, as celebrations continue in parts of Asia, for many in Europe, New Year's Eve perhaps won't quite be the riotous celebration that we'd hoped for after a year of ramping up vaccinations. Many Europeans will have a quieter evening after cities across Italy, Spain and France cancelled big parties and fireworks, and Germany limited gatherings to 10 people. Our correspondent Benji Haya reports.
For many in Europe, New Year's Eve last year was spent under lockdown. Few could have imagined that 12 months later, people would be bidding farewell to 2021 under fresh COVID-19 restraints. Paris's famous New Year's Eve celebrations have officially been scrapped. The concerts on the Champs-Élysées cancelled. Large gatherings aren't allowed in Germany either. Only 10 people can legally congregate there. That means no big events in Berlin and other major cities. Instead, a small fireworks display will be broadcast live on TV. In Italy, public events are banned. Greece has called off its festivities normally held at iconic sites, including the Acropolis in Athens. The Spanish capital, Madrid, is one of just a few European capitals where public celebrations will go ahead. Authorities are limiting numbers to 7,000. Attendees are required to wear masks and observe social distancing. Meanwhile, London's New Year's Eve event in Trafalgar Square is off. It had been organised to replace the fireworks, which usually attract thousands of visitors to the banks of the River Thames. Yet pubs and nightclubs in England are open. Boris Johnson resisting calls to impose curbs. In his New Year's Eve message, the UK's Prime Minister says Britain is incomparably better in terms of the position to fight against COVID-19 than it was at the end of 2020. That's because of vaccinations. As Europe embraces 2022, the focus is turning to how to deal with this pandemic in the long term. Greece following Italy and Spain in easing its isolation rules in an effort to keep key industries afloat which have been suffering from shortages of staff. And from January 4th, Germany will allow fully vaccinated Brits to enter without the need for quarantine. Benji Hire, CGTN, Brussels.
You're watching CGTN as the world welcomes the arrival of 2022. Still ahead, we'll look back at some of the big stories making the news over the past year. After Donald Trump, many expected a reset in the relationship between the United States and China. It didn't happen. Will it in 2022?
Search CGTN Europe wherever you get your podcasts to subscribe to The Agenda podcast. The Agenda with me, Stephen Cole, always gets to the heart of the story. Just subscribe today and listen now.
Events have consequences. Words create impact.
One more offensive in a long line of battles that's been ongoing for more.
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots. Excuse us, excuse us.
The world today matters for your world tomorrow.
The number of casualties is growing quickly.
Why, this is one of the hardest hit towns in the region.
The world today, every day on CGTN.
Facing the unknown is always difficult. In a world in turmoil, it's easy to lose orientation. But when the storms come, we have to see the possibilities, reinvent, find new opportunities, discover a path forward. CGTN. See the difference.
The world has changed under the pressure of the pandemic. For many of us, life is returning to some kind of normal. As we're adapting to changes in all of our lives, let Global Business Europe be your guide to the new normal. Join us weekdays on CGTN.
Beijing.
The world's fastest skaters coming in with speed and balance.
Figure skaters showcasing their elegance and precision are expected to shine.
A sport of focus and concentration. Curling is arguably the game's most strategic event.
The 2022 Winter Games are here. Join us for all the action, only on CGTN.
Thank you to all our viewers for your continued support for CGTN. This year has been a challenging one with the coronavirus pandemic, but China has made tremendous efforts in fighting the virus and helping the international community with vaccines. I believe we have so much to look forward to in the coming year as we build a better future for all mankind. On behalf of the Beijing team, I wish all of you a happy New Year.
Hello, I'm Jamie Owen. Welcome to CGTN's Europe Hub in London. Few of us in this part of the world will look back on 2021 as a vintage year. The pandemic has separated far too many family and friends. So as we look towards 2022, let's hope the new year offers hope of the beginning of the end of the pandemic. From all of us at CGTN in London, Happy New Year.
Xinyan Kuaila. Hi there, Mike Walter coming to you from Washington, D.C. at CGTN America, our broadcast center, where we just celebrated our 10th anniversary. And I want to wish all of you a prosperous 2022. We're really looking forward to the Year of the Tiger, the Olympics in Beijing. Gua Nin Hao.
If there's one thing we've learned, it's that as a community of nations, we are stronger together. So my wish for 2022 is that come what may, be it climate or conflict or future pandemics, may Africa work as one. Happy New Year.
Welcome back to our live coverage of the dawn of a new year as 2022 unfolds around the world.
Well, as the calendar turns on the old year, let's take a look back on the stories that made the headlines around the world in 2021.
China's President Xi Jinping proposed a global development initiative to the United Nations General Assembly via video link in September. The plan charts the course for global growth and international cooperation. Over the past year, President Xi attended a series of international meetings on key issues such as global governance, the fight against the pandemic, economic recovery, and climate change. Xi said China is committed to world peace and security, practices genuine multilateralism, and looks to build a community with a shared future for mankind. The Omicron variant has been reported in well over 100 countries and regions. The WHO says more than 8 billion vaccine doses have been administered globally as of December 22nd. But there's severe inequity in distribution between rich and poor countries. China has blamed some countries for politicizing the origin tracing of COVID. China has supplied vaccines to more than 120 countries and regions as the world's largest provider. In 2021, China and Russia have continued to deepen their comprehensive strategic partnership. Their biggest joint nuclear energy project began in May. In June, Chinese President Xi Jinping and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin extended a treaty of good neighborliness and friendly cooperation. The two leaders held a virtual meeting on December 15th. Trade between the two countries has reached a record high. The U.S. and its allies pulled out their troops in Afghanistan in August without effectively containing terrorism. Over America's 20-year occupation, more than 100,000 Afghans were estimated to have been killed or wounded by foreign forces, and tens of millions have become refugees. Afghanistan is now facing a deteriorating security situation, a collapsing economy, and a growing humanitarian crisis. Major economies, including the US and the EU, have seen significant inflation. America's consumer price index rose nearly 7% in November from a year earlier, a record high in 39 years. Meanwhile, as of November, China's foreign trade had been increasing for 18 consecutive months. Some analysts say China remains a key contributor to world economic recovery. Growing tensions between Russia and Western countries, fresh sanctions and the extension of old ones against Moscow over so-called human rights issues, Ukraine, and the Nord Stream 2 pipeline project. In April, President Vladimir Putin warned Russia will make a swift and harsh response if the West crosses its red lines. In December, Moscow demanded guarantee from the US and NATO that they would not expand military capabilities in Eastern Europe towards Russia. On January 6th in Washington, a mob of supporters of the then President Donald Trump attacked the Capitol. They tried to disrupt the presidential transition. 5 people died and hundreds of others were injured. It was the first breach of the building since 1814 when British forces tried to attack it. Some analysts say the riots exposed the deficiency and hypocrisy of American democracy. In September, Australia, the UK, and the US announced a military partnership called AUKUS. A primary mission is to provide the Australian Navy with nuclear-powered submarines. This triggered concerns and opposition from the international community. Many said it violated the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. And separately, Japan announced to release treated but still contaminated nuclear wastewater into sea. The waters from a power plant in Fukushima, which was crippled by an earthquake and tsunami in 2011. Regional countries opposed the move. 2 global conferences were held this year aimed at environmental conservation. The COP15 was held in China in October. The meeting adopted the Kunming Declaration, which calls for action to slow biodiversity loss. In November, COP26 was convened in Glasgow. Participants finalized detailed implementation plans of the Paris Agreement. China and the U.S. signed a joint declaration to combat climate change. A new Olympic model debuted at the Tokyo Summer Olympics. The International Olympic Committee added the word "together" to the previous version of faster, higher, stronger. The IOC says it's trying to highlight the importance of unity. In December, the United Nations passed the Olympic Truth Resolution ahead of the Beijing Winter Olympic Games. Also, the 10th Olympic Summit in December said the Games and sport should not be politicized.
Well, wherever you live, you'll have your own highlights of the past year. On the international stage, the COVID-19 vaccination drive, the G7 summit, and the efforts to halt climate change at COP26 grabbed the headlines. Here's a look at some of the top stories in Europe and beyond in 2021.
We should all be wide awake to the threat of this virus.
European health regulators are taking longer to approve the jabs, weeks after the UK and US signed off on it.
It was a bold gamble for the Prime Minister that has seen his popularity soar alongside the vaccine rollout.
In the early morning shadows of what would soon become Prince Philip's final resting place, there was little fanfare.
COVID-19 regulations make this a very different kind of royal funeral.
It was lunchtime on Sunday when the 20-minute ride from the lakeside town to the top of the mountain was cut tragically short. Emergency services rushed to the scene.
It's the start of a new space age as Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic takes off, fulfilling his lifetime's ambition to fly to the edge of space.
I was once a child with a dream, looking up to the stars.
Waters came rushing in. One survivor says, recounting the terrifying night his entire house was engulfed by the floods.
Chancellor Angela Merkel came armed with her government checkbook. The terrifying memory of the night the rain came will likely be around for much longer.
2021 has been Europe's worst year on record for wildfires.
Rome and Sicily hit 48.8 degrees Celsius, a level some scientists believe is the highest temperature in European history.
Once again, fire crews and volunteers are battling wildfires close to the Greek capital. Authorities are doing everything they can to avoid disaster.
It's hard for people not to panic. The gunfire, the speed of the Taliban advance, the rapid departure of Western officials, it's all driving thousands of Afghans to seek the dubious sanctuary of Kabul airport. European, American, Australian flights are being loaded as NATO allies literally flee the last chaotic days of a 20-year campaign.
All the West involved in this problem. All the West.
Either we stop it or it stops us. It's pushing humanity to the brink.
Many poorer countries here want more money to protect themselves from future damage.
But if the science is anything to go by, the bigger picture is that we're all in this together.
Now, the lava flow has covered nearly 900 hectares of land, and thousands of people have had to evacuate their homes. Madrid's annual Christmas run is back. Proceeds from the race will help victims of the Cumbre Vieja volcano eruption in La Palma.
Western leaders blamed the migrant crisis on the Belarus government, which encouraged migrants to come to the area from the Middle East. But all sides acknowledge the migrant crisis has entered this part of Europe and that it is here to stay.
It's a motivation that few in Britain or France can truly fathom. To pay thousands of dollars to take your family and children through the world's busiest shipping lanes to find sanctuary in a country that doesn't want you.
The birth of cubs is a real cause for celebration, along with a naming ceremony.
Yuan Li Li, which translates to happy, and Yuan Du Du, meaning cute and chubby. And when they reach the age of 3 or 4, they'll go back to their homeland.
After nearly 2 months of intense negotiations to form a government that will take over from Chancellor Angela Merkel next month.
The most valued asset for this coalition to be successful will surely be compromise.
Emma Raducanu is the first female UK tennis player to win a Grand Slam singles title in 44 years. But COVID-19 restrictions meant her parents were not able to be in New York to celebrate.
When the travel restrictions were finally lifted, families and couples who'd been separated for so long, hugging and being reunited. And unfortunately, with this new Omicron variant, it does seem that countries are starting to batten down the hatches again.
We have the vaccines to protect our people, so let's do it. Let's get boosted now.
No community and no individual is safe until we are all safe.
"2021 saw China start building its first permanent space station. Some space experts say the ambitious project marks China's coming of age.
James Head, a professor of geological sciences at Brown University, has trained astronauts in geology and helped choose the landing sites for the Apollo lunar program. I talked to him about a momentous year in space exploration.
It's really incredible that we've been able to accomplish so many things in space, even with the pandemic. It's just a testimony to the resilience of international space industry and exploration. I would say, looking back, there are a number of things that I think having all the missions that we've been able to accomplish into the solar system. China has landed a rover on Mars, so has the United States. ESA is coming next. We have 5 missions in the queue that are coming up for Venus. We actually return samples robotically, China's Chang'e 5 mission, for the first time in over 40 years from the moon. And it's just amazing. It completely made the excitement in the lunar science community, and the results from that mission are stunning, really stunning.
China will look back on the year as the year when Chinese space exploration came of age.
First of all, China joined the rest of humanity in Tiangong, essentially, space station, creating another international village in low Earth orbit. So, you know, it's another village. They're literally villages, international villages. The International Space Station's been up there over 20 years. And now China will be taking international partners into their space station. It's like we're beginning to live in low Earth orbit. Villages are starting to spring up, and they're great for research and other types of things. So that was just one accomplishment of China. And then, of course, landing on the surface of Mars, a rover on the surface of Mars for the first time, first try, and then returning samples from the surface of the moon from a very, very critical place. A big missing chapter in our understanding of lunar history.
One of the downsides of all this activity in space, of course, is the increasing amount of space debris and the rather controversial ways of trying to get rid of duff satellites and other bits of kit.
One other accomplishment in the last year, it's hard to think of it as an accomplishment, but has been the increased awareness of space pollution, space trash, if you will. And essentially, we have so many objects up there now that we have to really keep close track of all of these things because they're flying around at extremely high speeds. And one impact could put a hole in the space station, for example, and doom it. The increased awareness of trash in space and trying to keep space peaceful for everyone is really, really, I think, one of the big awarenesses of this past year. Not only are we beginning to understand the fragility of our own environment, down on the Earth in terms of climate and weather, but also space. It's not just a trash can, folks. It's really something we have to take care of.
James, let's look ahead to the new year. What does 2022 hold? What should we look out for?
Well, there's so many exciting things. You know, I tell my students every year, starting graduate students, this is the best year you could be coming into planetary science. And sometimes I think, am I really telling them the truth every year? But it just gets better and better. And this coming year is going to be fantastic. We have 5 missions that are underway in the next decade to go to Venus. And of course, the results from the James Webb Space Telescope. We can see the stars in the sky, but what do they look like in detail? What are the galaxies? What do the cosmos look like? And the James Webb Telescope is going to reach out And really, that's going to be a big deal in the future to discovery after discovery as deep space becomes our neighborhood. It's going to be fantastic. So there's so many things going on. I'm just so excited.
There were high hopes after the Trump presidency of a reset in the relationship between China and the United States as Joe Biden became America's 46th president in 2021. But despite a change of personnel in the White House, tensions continue to simmer between the world's two largest economies. Well, let's talk now to our correspondent John Terrett in New York. Hello to you, John. So what's divided the United States and China in 2021?
Hey, Robin. Hey, Jamie. I mean, what hasn't divided the two countries, quite frankly? I'm afraid the relationship has not been warm and is not warm, although my sense of it is that things are getting a little bit warmer around the edges as we come to the end of the year. But cast your mind back to that first meeting between the officials from the Biden administration and the team from Beijing. They picked Alaska, one of the coldest places on Earth, to do that meeting. And boy, was it a frosty meeting. It descended into rancor, quite frankly. And I think that the Chinese were and are very frustrated that the Biden administration then had shown very little sign of rowing back on any of the Trump-era policies against China. And of course, that hasn't really changed. And I've just written a list of the issues that are irritating China at the moment, that are dividing them. So in no particular order, you have the billions of dollars of sanctions that are applied against Chinese imports into the United States. You've got sanctions over human rights issues, which China believes are its domestic affairs and none of the business of the United States. You've got the delisting of companies at the New York Stock Exchange, just a few streets away from where I am at the moment. You've got the ban on Americans investing in Chinese corporations, which has been expanded by the Biden administration, not reduced in any way. There's the Competition Act working its way through Congress, designed to have a go at China, particularly in Africa. The exclusion of Chinese technology. And then over and above all of that, you've got these various alliances now forming, like the Quad, which involves Australia, Japan, India, and the United States. They met at the White House earlier this year. They want to take supply chains away from China, battery production away from China, that sort of thing. You've got the AUKUS deal that we heard about just now involving the UK, the US, and Australia, leaving France out in the cold, which really upsets China. They're very concerned about Australia getting nuclear-powered submarines because they could be quickly converted into nuclear-armed submarines, and the general expansion of US foreign policy into Southeast Asia. Now, on top of that, you've got the boycott, the diplomatic one, of the Beijing Olympics coming up in February. Now, China, sees all of these things I've mentioned as an attempt to hobble its rising, where from its point of view, it thinks that it's been rather damaged by Western countries like America and Britain, France and Germany over a 200-year period. And it sees all of these things as an attempt to hold it back.
And John, you described the US-China relationship as getting warmer round the edges. Are there signs of a brighter year ahead?
Well, there really are, despite everything I've just told you. Actually, there really are. Now, President Xi, ahead of that virtual summit with President Biden back in November, said we should each run our domestic affairs well, at the same time shoulder our share of international responsibilities and work together to advance the noble causes of world peace and development. And there is a real underlying sense in the diplomatic community that actually, if they do work together, they can get a lot done. COP26 in Glasgow, which you covered so well on this program, is the prime example of that. China and the US working together behind the scenes to keep that deal alive when it was pretty moribund. On top of that, there's been movement on military issues, journalistic issues, particularly after the Biden-Xi summit. Wang Mengzhou has now been released from house arrest and is back in China. They've worked together on oil supply issues, supply chain issues, inflation. They have a mutual interest in Afghanistan and Iran. The difference is, my sense of it, is that the US sees everything that it's doing as strategic competition from the free trade, land of the free style that we have here. So they see it as strategic competition. I think China rather sees all of this as strategic confrontation. And that is the difference. So that's something to work on in 2022, I feel.
John, thanks very much. John Terrett there in New York.